Okay, I show 6 o'clock, and I hereby call this meeting, the special meeting of the San Benito County Planning Commission to order. May we have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Scagliotti.
Begin salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May we have the roll call, please?
Absolutely. District 1, Vincent Ringhayden.
Present.
District 2, Richard Way.
Present.
District 3, Robert Scagliotti.
Present.
District 4, Robert Gibson.
Present.
District 5, Bobby Thomason is absent, but we do have a quorum.
Thank you. The consent agenda tonight consists solely of acknowledging the certificate of posting for this meeting. Do we have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. No opposed. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. Moving on to the public hearing, we are swapping the order of the two items because there are a number of people here who are specifically interested in the animal ordinance, so we will be covering item 5.2 first. The order of the presentation, or the order of the things that are going to happen tonight is first we'll have the presentation by staff, then we'll have questions from the commission for the staff. We'll then open it up for public comment. When we do have the public comment, each public commenter will be limited probably to 3 minutes, although it'll depend to some extent on how many public comment cards we have. If there are 100 public comment cards, we probably won't be able to do 3 minutes each, but we'll play that by ear when we get there. We will have to be pretty strict in limiting given the number of people that are here. I'll try not to cut people off mid-sentence, but you might be cut off mid-paragraph. Then we'll bring it back to the commission for discussion, and then we might make a motion to either pass it on to the board for recommendation or recommend that the board not take action, or, you know, we'll have a discussion and move on from there. So that's what's going to happen. So may we have the presentation from staff, please? Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Victor Tafoya, Associate Planner with the County of San Benito, and tonight I will be discussing San Benito County's Ordinance Title 13, also known as the Animal Ordinance. So we've updated the ordinance in order to be clear and clarify animal keeping rules, making them easy for everyone in our community to understand and follow. These updates help protect public health and safety by reducing potential conflicts and hazards related to animals. They also support agriculture. We've worked to enhance animal welfare standards using research-backed recommendation from trusted agencies such as the USDA and the University of California Cooperative Extension. Lastly, we've carefully reviewed and updated our definitions and procedures so they're current, clear, effective, and ensuring they reflect modern practices and community expectations. Okay, on the screen is a timeline of the development of the ordinance. First, on August 13 of 2024, the Board of Supervisors gave us a clear direction to review and evaluate our existing animal-related policies. That initial direction was crucial. It laid the foundation for a subsequent effort and discussion. Next, from May through July of 2024, we organized a series of internal agency stakeholder meetings. During these meetings, we gathered detailed insight and recommendation from county experts, including the Agricultural Commissioner, Animal Control, Code Enforcement, and County Council. These internal meetings helped us clearly understand the practical regulations and enforcement consideration for the proposed ordinance updates. Then on April 15 of 2025, we held the Agricultural Stakeholder Planning Group meeting. This meeting was specifically designed to include input from local agricultural stakeholders. It allowed us to ensure that we have a clearly understood and accounted for agricultural interests and practical concerns directly from the agricultural and agricultural industry representatives. Today, June 4 of 2025, we've reached an important milestone, the Planning Commission public hearing. This is your opportunity to carefully review and provide final recommendation and suggest any refinements. Your feedback is crucial to ensuring this ordinance best serves our community. Finally, following today's Planning Commission hearing, our next step is to present this ordinance to the Board of Supervisors. The first reading and initial discussion to the board will occur on June 24 of 2025. Following that, we'll hold a second reading anticipated in July or August. During this meeting, the board can formally adopt the ordinance. After the second reading and adoption, the ordinance will officially take effect, supporting the county's ongoing commitment to health, safety, and clear animal regulations. At a recent agricultural element stakeholder meeting on June 3rd, stakeholders unanimously recommended that the current proposed ordinance amendments to Title 13 be removed from the upcoming agenda. If removing the agenda entirely is impossible, they strongly recommend that at least we consider a continuance, giving us more time to thoroughly address several key unresolved issues. The key issues include clearly defining livestock setback from commercial crops, ensuring clarity in our livestock size definition to avoid confusion during enforcement, determining appropriate and fair livestock number limits, carefully considering whether to include additional exemptions such as horse boarding and rodeos, which also being mindful of how too many exemptions might have complicate the ordinance, is explicitly clarifying all the existing livestock operations are to be grandfathered in, ensuring this ordinance would apply to future agriculture, and developing effective, clear methods of regulating and enforcing the ordinance. In this side, I would like to briefly compare our livestock regulations in San Benito County with other counties across California. So this comparison helps us understand where we stand. First, Stanislaus County strongly enforces the right to farm protections, requiring disclosure notices of property deeds near agricultural operations. They have clear guidelines about buffer and setback, especially during new residential developments, to maintain appropriate distances from farm animal operations. Moving to Santa Barbara County, they have one of the oldest right to farm ordinance in California, dating back to 1971. They regulate horse boarding, kennels, and even vineyard events to minimize conflict. Grazing regulations, they're focused primarily on managing open range and confinement operations with specific permits and review for larger facilities. In Kings County, regulations include detailed dairy element guidelines focusing on manure management, odor control, setbacks, and monitoring. Kings County requires permits, events for small-scale livestock operation for control of nuisance like odor, noise, and flies. Continuing the comparison, Tulare County aggressively implements right to farm policies. Their Rural Valley Plan specifically addresses siting control for livestock facilities, actively discouraging incompatible land uses. They've created detailed guidelines for animal confinement facilities, especially dairies, covering issues such as odor management, groundwater protection, and overall compatibility. San Joaquin County has a right to farm policies established since the 1980s. They have guidelines encouraging, managing cattle grazing, and streamlining permitting for ranchers. San Joaquin also places careful limits on backyard livestock and pig operations, particularly within unincorporated residential areas, to maintain neighborhood compatibility. Lastly, current county emphasized right to farm policies due to significant interaction between agricultural areas and expanding urban areas. Their livestock ordinance specifically allows open grazing on extensive rangelands without any permits, but they impose strict permitting and environmental requirement for confined animal facilities. These rules have become strict due to historical air quality and groundwater issues near urban areas. So when revisiting our livestock regulations, we've clearly defined large livestock as animals over 150 pounds, like cattle, horses, llamas, and small livestock as animals under 150 pounds, like miniature goats, sheep, and potbelly pigs. These clear definitions help us apply rules consistently and fairly. Importantly, livestock keeping will now only be permitted in specific zoning districts: agricultural rangeland, agricultural productive, rural transitional, and rural residential. Livestock will no longer be allowed in certain residential zones. This decision is strongly supported by research from the University of California Cooperative Extension and best practices from other counties throughout California. Studies consistently show that allowing livestock operations in residential areas significantly increase conflict related to noise, odor, pest, and public health concerns such as pathogen transmission. Clearly separating livestock operations such as from purely residential development helps protect community health and ensures agricultural activities can continue without unnecessary complaints or restrictions. Additionally, we've established clear density limits on how many livestock can be kept per acre to prevent overcrowding, ensure good animal welfare, and minimize neighborhood impacts. We've also introduced setback requirements. These require distance between livestock grazing areas and neighboring commercial agricultural crops. Our new standard setback will be 1,200 feet but research from the California Department of Food and Agriculture and the UC Cooperative Extension indicate that they can safely be reduced to 400 feet when effective physical barriers such as sturdy fencing and dense vegetation buffers are installed. To illustrate how this works practically and importantly recognizing it applies equally to both livestock and crop farmers, let's consider this example. So imagine there's an existing vegetable farm successfully growing leafy greens for more than 3 years. A neighboring landowner then decides to introduce cattle grazing nearby. According to our ordinance, the cattle rancher must respect the established vegetable operation by maintaining a setback of at least 1,200 feet to reduce contamination risk and protect food and safety standards. However, if the cattle rancher installs approved physical barriers, such as sturdy fencing combined with dense vegetation, this required setback can be reduced to 400 feet. Conversely, let's say a cattle rancher has been successfully grazing livestock for more than 3 years, and someone else decides to plant a vegetable nearby. The same rules apply in reverse. The new vegetable farmer would have to be required to maintain the same setback distance from the established livestock operation. If a dispute arises, our ordinance clearly prioritizes the established agriculture operation, regardless of whether it's livestock or crops, provided it complies with health and safety standards. This is directly supported by California Civil Code 3482.5 and our local right to farm ordinance. Moving on from livestock, let's discuss our updates to household pets, specifically dogs and cats. We've updated the limits on how many dogs and cats can be kept at home To help maintain safe and manageable conditions for dogs, the maximum is 5 adult dogs and 12 puppies, ensuring a total never exceeding 12 animals. For cats, we've set limits at 9 adult cats or 12 kittens, with the combination total not exceeding 15 animals. Additionally, we've included clear exemptions to support veterinarians, hospitals, animal shelters, foster care programs, and permitted kennels. These exemptions make sure essential animal-related activities can continue without unnecessary restrictions or conflicts. Next, let's discuss the updates regarding animals that may pose a threat to public safety. We call these dangerous animals. We've clearly defined procedures to help our animal control officer know exactly how to handle these situations in a safe and effective manner. Additionally, we made improvements to our procedures for impounding animals and promptly notifying owners. These updates aim to provide clarity and ensure a fair process for everyone involved. Finally, we've clearly outlined the penalties for anyone violating these animal regulations, specifically detailed in Chapter 1.03 of our County Code. This ensures everyone clearly understands the rules and any potential consequences if the rules are not followed. Next, let's talk about new standards we've introduced specifically for beekeeping. As you know, bees are essential for pollination, supporting agricultural productivity, and maintaining healthy ecosystems. We carefully studied research and guidelines provided by the University of California Cooperative Extension and the USDA. Their recommendations helped us shape clear rules regarding setbacks, adequate water supply requirements, and clear hive identifications. Procedures, these standards are designed to significantly reduce potential conflicts between neighbors and improve overall bee health. Importantly, while creating these standards, our approach aims to support and encourage responsible beekeeping rather than impose restrictive measures by carefully balancing community safety with the practical need of beekeepers. These rules will help foster community harmony and cooperation within our community. Now let's take a look at some of the important staff recommendations based on our agricultural element planning group at yesterday's meeting. So staff recommends adding a definition for newly established agriculture, clarifying activity subject to updated ordinance standards. Additionally, staff is recommending the inclusion of a rural residential zoning district and updating livestock density limits to 1 animal per acre, allowing increased flexibility for property owners. Staff also recommends...
You have a typo on that last slide. It says no more than 1, 2.
Yeah, that's a mistake on my end. Okay. Staff also recommends clearly defining exemptions for small livestock maintained as part of commercial ranching, farming operations, or horse boarding facilities within specific zoning districts, aligning these with existing zoning code definitions. Okay. Staff recommends explicitly prohibiting poultry and rabbits from trespassing onto properties involved in growing leafy greens and other crops for human consumption, aligning with our ordinance with California Leafy Greens Marketing Agreement standards. Okay. Staff recommends establishing a 1,200-foot setback between grazing lands and crop under LGMA guidelines, reducing to 400 feet with effective physical barriers. We're also requiring reciprocal setbacks for new cultivated crops to protect existing livestock operations. Additionally, staff recommends reciprocal setback for new crops cultivating areas under LGMA standards, ensuring these setbacks protect both existing livestock operations and new crop cultivating areas equally. Additionally, let's see here. Staff recommends clarifying enforcement provisions. Specifically, county may pursue abatement actions specifically aimed at protecting commercial crop production regulated under the LGMA. Staff recommends updating the ordinance purpose statement for explicitly prioritizing and protecting established agricultural operations, particularly emphasizing compliance with LGMA food safety standards. Finally, staff is recommending clearly prioritizing agricultural operations and conflict emphasizing compliance with health, safety, and specifically LGMA guidelines. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Victor. Questions from the commission? Commissioner Scagliotti?
None at this time. I probably will, but not right now.
Commissioner Gibson?
I want to thank you for all the time you put into this, and I will reserve my comments after public comment.
Commissioner Ringhayden?
Again, thank you for the presentation. Just a question on the livestock setback. It's 1,200 feet. Is it, so that's who got there first? Is that how that works?
Correct.
As far as, okay.
Who's established first?
Who was established first for 3 years?
Correct.
Okay. That's my one question for now.
Okay, and my question is about the grandfathering. I didn't see it in the ordinance itself that if somebody has existing livestock on their property, I had somebody ping me on this on Facebook, actually. If somebody has existing livestock on their property, even if the property wouldn't qualify under this ordinance, I think the intent of this ordinance is that they would get to keep that existing livestock. Is that correct?
Correct. So our ordinance would take into effect everything existing stays as is, and then it would only affect anybody introducing new livestock or
Okay, well,
crops.
we need to make sure that the wording in the ordinance, well, this isn't really a question. I shouldn't use the question time for that. All right, thank you. All right, I guess we should probably open it up for public comment at this point. So, yeah, as I said, roughly how many comment cards do we have, Stephanie? Just a ballpark figure. A dozen?
Sorry, probably more like 20.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we can go with 3 minutes per.
Okay. I'm gonna call Natalie Martin. Please approach the podium. You'll have 3 minutes. And then following Natalie is gonna be Donald Wers.
My name is Natalie Day, or Natalie Martin, I'm sorry, I just got married. I'm here to hopefully include spay-neuter ordinance in all of those ordinances that I was hearing about. I have worked in rescue. I am actually a nonprofit rescue now called For Feral's Sake, and I just came from a colony that I'm feeding on county property that no one owns. They're all fixed. And while I was there, I popped a big abscess on one of them that let me grab him. I mean, this problem is so out of control. And these cats didn't get here by accident or by their own accord. They were failed by humans, and I know that all of us in this room probably have had a litter of kittens, or as a kid, our dogs had puppies, and that was a different time. But right now, we're killing perfectly healthy animals in shelters just as for lack of houses, lack of homes. And an ordinance to prevent the continued explosion of feral cats, because feral cats came from house cats that were abandoned or left behind, or people moved away and left them. They don't just come up like that. They're born into a household, and then they get left behind, and then they're feral when those have kittens. I'm sorry, my speech is over there. My point is, a spay-neuter ordinance would go exponentially into helping us with this cause, because it's not just feral cats that are in the streets having kittens. I've got friendly cats having no owners in the streets having kittens. The shelter takes no kittens. Everything is on the burden of the rescues for cats, because our shelter takes no cats. So if we could just get an ordinance that slows this down, then the monthly feral cat clinics that we have provided by you guys and the city might actually make a dent in this thing. I feel like I'm emptying the ocean with a teaspoon right now, because they are reproducing faster than I can trap and fix them. And if we had an ordinance in place, all the new cats coming into town, that you can adopt a cat out without it being spayed or neutered. We have to do that with our own shelter. They adopt out cats that are not spayed and neutered, and dogs, not cats, because they don't take cats anymore, but they adopt out animals that aren't fixed. And that is a problem. Animals need to be fixed. If anybody has any questions, please Google US numbers for the shelters that are killing totally healthy animals as a result of no homes. And I just want to add that ordinance to that. Let's be proactive and make a stand against this endless, needless suffering. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Donald, then we're gonna have Tim Borland, followed up by Kathleen Costello.
Good evening, Commissioners, county staff, and Cari Fratelli. And my name is Donald Wurz. I am the president of San Benito County Farm Bureau, and I also sit on the stakeholders group for the county general plan ag element. So I was in the meeting that was discussed. So I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces from like 24 hours ago. I'd like to reiterate the objections that Victor brought up to the livestock part of this ordinance, specifically around setbacks against leafy greens. The 1,200-foot setback that's being proposed between operations that have livestock and leafy green operations is really damaging to either the livestock operation or to the leafy green operation. If you were to imagine a 5-acre parcel, which we do have a lot of ag productive in this county that is currently zoned at where you can go down to 5 acres. If you were to enforce a 1,200-foot setback on a 5-acre parcel, you would effectively require the fallowing of over 90% of that 5-acre parcel, assuming that it's like a perfect rectangle. And so we're making assumptions. But there are multiple other issues with this part of the animal ordinance. Farm Bureau is opposed to it in its current iteration. The general plan stakeholders group was vehemently against it when it was presented to us yesterday afternoon. Sorry, staff got to be on the receiving end of that. And so I would request that you either amend this proposal or table it for further consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim?
Good evening, Commissioners. Tim Borland here, and staff, thank you for all the work you've done. Just following up on Donald, I too am on the Ag Stakeholders Committee. I appreciate that staff back in February, I think I don't know when you received the grant, but received a grant, and on behalf of all the taxpaying citizens of the county, they do want to hear more from us about how these ordinances could best serve our entire county. So I appreciate that they called many of us. A lot of the bigger farmers and ranchers are on the committee. We just met for 2 hours yesterday. We meet every month. We'll meet for another 2 years if we have, I think we have 3 years of grant. We'll meet for another 3 years if we have to. The whole purpose of the stakeholder committee is we're trying to work with all of our local farms and ranches, and anybody that wants to come to the meeting can also come and talk with us, but we're trying
Please
to
address
talk
the
with.
commission.
What's that?
Please address the commission.
Oh, I'm sorry. But what we're trying to do is bring everybody together, and as a unified voice, we're trying to help staff understand how these ordinances may or may not best serve the community. And so we're going to continue to meet, and we're going to continue to help provide a voice. And As we spoke yesterday over the animal ordinance, we did find that there was quite a bit of confusion. It felt like this is being pushed through maybe a little bit too quickly, that a lot of us aren't. Honestly, yesterday, a lot of the farmers and ranchers said, hey, we're okay working together on this and trying to find a way to work together with our neighbors instead of having a ordinance that is not a one-size-fits-all ordinance. And as was already mentioned, this could affect people that don't need to be affected in a negative way, and it could not affect people in a positive way. So we just, as a committee, we want to help in that process. And so I represent that committee, and anything we can continue to do to help bring you a unified voice. But we would like to ask that this be tabled, that we could spend more time in the stakeholder committee to pull together the voices of the county and bring that back to you. And when we're ready to bring a formal recommendation, we would like to do that. All right, thank you for your time, commissioners.
Thank you.
Kathleen, followed up by Mike Nino.
Good evening. My name is Kathleen Costello. Excuse me if I'm misspeaking on this. I did listen to the presentation and read up beforehand, but I'm just here to talk about, I think this applies to 1 acre, I'm not sure, but I'm just here to talk about kind of the effect on kids. So I have 6 kids myself. I have over 60 nieces and nephews. I've been a teacher for 12 years, and I've been a leader of literally dozens of 4-H groups, Cub Scout groups, Boy Scout merit badges, and confirmation classes. I know that it's great for kids to have the opportunity to have animals, and ideally on their own property. So many things now with kids, they can't go to the park by themselves, can't really ride their bikes around, don't really walk to school. Giving these kids chances to have the responsibility for a live creature, to go out there in the cold in the morning and feed it, worry about the finances of it, it's just a great thing for kids. The other thing I wanted to mention is often, my kids have been in 4-H 18 years, and every once in a while they'll have a discussion or they'll have a survey, and it'll be like, gee, how come we can't get more Hispanic kids in 4-H? Well, the reason is it's too expensive to, my kids are half Hispanic, my husband is Hispanic, but the reason is, it's really expensive to buy acreage and have your animals. The smaller properties at least gives more people chances to raise animals, which is a good thing for their kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Nino.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. My name is Mike Nino. I'm from 111 Best Road in Hollister, and I just wanted to focus mostly on the 1,200-foot setback. This was not a problem 30 years ago, but since then, a lot of food safety things have come into, and rightfully so, have come into focus, and so that's where these setbacks come from. Now, what this really is a burden on the farmer, in my view. It's a burden on the farmer because he has less options. He doesn't have he has some options, but he has less options of less crops that he can grow near, for example, ranches or smaller areas that have livestock. In my view, this 1,200 feet, what it really does is it transfers the burden from the farmers to the neighbors. For example, people that have existing, and I'm not exactly sure on the ordinance, but my understanding was if there's something that's already grandfathered in, they can stay. Well, I'm not sure what happens if that sells. I'm not sure exactly how that works out. If it does, then that's going to diminish the value of the property next door. I think another thing that this does that I think is a little, and again, I'm just focused on this 1,200 feet. The farmer can still grow all kinds of crops within that area, just depending on what they are, but they're limited to some that they can't grow. So it's not like they have to take that, for example, if this doesn't pass, it's not like that 1,200 feet is worthless because they can grow things on it. I was involved in a similar situation in Monterey County. with 4 or 5 miles of or maybe less than that, a couple of miles of fence line where we had a farmer next door. And the farmer, we had our cattle, and the farmer, he had his leafy greens. And as the food restrictions and the safety restrictions became more and more prominent over the years, he had to do something. In that particular case, what he did was he bought an easement from us. It worked out good for us, and it worked out good for him. He's sure for the rest of his life, as long as he owns it, he can go ahead and farm within that area, and we will move our cattle during the months of the year that need to be moved. So I think this is more of a neighbor and neighbor thing, and I think that it's not fair with this 1,200 feet of the burden that was put on the farmers is transferred to the neighbors. I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you.
I'm gonna apologize in advance. I think this is Kaya Clower. And then after that will be Carson Clower.
Hello, my name is Kai Clower. I'm 9 years old. I'm in 4th grade at Sierra Vista. I'm in Cienega 4-H. A couple weeks ago, I got my first goat. Her name's Willow. Willow is a meat goat that I am raising for San Benito County Fair. It is nice for me to be able to have my goat Willow at my home because it is easier for me to bond with her and for her to trust me. Please don't change the rules to keep me from getting to have my 4-H animal at my home. Thank you for listening to me and taking this into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carson Clower. I live on Rosebud in the rural residential zoning designation in the unincorporated area of the county. And first of all, I'd like to just kind of thank staff for all their work on this. This is kind of a beast to deal with. I read through everything. I think that the majority of what's been presented makes sense. But the livestock setback and all the rules associated with that, it's problematic for a lot of reasons. I had a list of comments on Friday afternoon when the packet came out, and then I had a new list of comments yesterday when the Ag Element Working Group met, and now I probably have a new list of comments based off of what was just presented today. I like to think I'm following this pretty closely, and it's very difficult, even for me who's thinking about this every day, to fully understand what's being presented. I read the zoning code a lot. I don't know what the LGMA is. That's like a brand new word or brand new acronym for me. And how does that interact with the existing code in 25 and 13 and everything else that we have to deal with to understand whether or not that we're following the rules? Because I want to teach my kids that we're supposed to follow the rules, and we've done our best to make sure that we're following the rules as they're put into place. And I don't want to put my family in a situation where I have to decide whether I'm not going to follow the new rules, or I got to tell my kid, hey, you can't have your animal anymore. So our situations may be a little unique. I do appreciate that some of the changes that I was looking for last week have already been made. So that's like a big win. But there's just a lot going on in this thing. Just from the presentation there, if you are a farmer and say you aren't doing, or you haven't been doing leafy greens or whatever is subject to the LGMA, and then you do a crop rotation where all of a sudden you have a contract to provide leafy greens now, is that a new use? Do you have to drop back the 1,200 feet on that? Let's say I have livestock and I have, 5 sheep, and then I add 5 more sheep, and it's allowed based off of the zoning designation. Is that an expanded use that creates a problem now for me with my setbacks? My concern is that every exemption that we think of, we bring in new language, but then that new language creates more questions. And I don't know how you're going to be able to, well, I know you're not going to be able to because it's not your job, but I don't know how the county or whoever it is going to be able to enforce any of this. We're trying to mandate people be good neighbors and legally, that's very difficult to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brett Johnson, followed up by Eric Martin.
Brett Johnson, 513 Lone Tree Road. County staff has proposed a beekeeping ordinance. I've allowed a beekeeper to keep bees at my property zoned ag productive for over 9 years, where I have a commercial agricultural operation. There are no incidents of bee activity injuring people or pets that have been brought to my attention. Certainly if there was, legal action would have been brought against me. The Ag Commissioner's Office has never reached out to indicate bees were not being kept in anything other than generally accepted practices, as that office is vested by the State Department of Agriculture as a responsible agency for enforcement. I have photos of my neighbor's horses grazing within 20 feet of the hives without a care. I've seen 2 neighbors mowing on their tractors within 10 feet of the hives. I work within 10 feet of the hives with no protective clothing, and all hives are more than 300 feet from any structures. Yet last June, county code enforcement unilaterally declared the bees were too close to residences, creating dangerous and unsafe conditions, and declared them a nuisance, then proceeded to civilly prosecute me for maintaining a nuisance without any prior contact. This is in direct contradiction to section 19.01.004 of the county code, specifically allowing this activity, and 3482.5 of the California Civil Code, which is a right to farm ordinance, and a agricultural operation that's been in effect for 3 years or more does not automatically become a nuisance due to a change in surrounding conditions. They didn't prosecute the beekeepers, they prosecuted me, the landowner. They refused to provide a hearing date in 30 days required by county code. Not until I requested the assistance of a member of the Board of Supervisors 9 months later did I receive notification the matter was dropped. And this time it cost me $7,300 in legal fees to defend myself for something that was not even a violation. Sometimes specialty crops require growers to bring in hives for pollination at the headlands, about 30 feet from roadways. That would now be illegal under this ordinance. One could reasonably consider myself and the beekeeper stakeholders in this matter, yet there was no notification of this proposed ordinance despite county code enforcement, the Ag Commissioner's Office, and County Council aware of the previous malicious prosecution. I question if there was any input from stakeholders on this matter. I doubt it. Here we are as county staff tries to autocratically pass an ordinance restricting lawful and safe agricultural practices on ag productive zoned parcels. I say no. There's a lot of talk about protecting agriculture, but it only seems to benefit big ag and to hell with the little people as county staff is using the power of government to pick winners and losers. This needs to end, or they need to find employment elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric Martin is going to be followed up by Wendy Brassfield.
No applause, please.
Eric Martin, 427 Olympia, San Juan Batista. So in an effort to keep this brief, I agree with quite a bit of what Mr. Nino said earlier. I'm surrounded on 3 sides by commercial producers. I have an 8-acre parcel. There's no possible way for me to comply with this. Just can't happen. What's that do to my property value? What does that do to the future of my family? That's the gist of this. This thing needs to just go away. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wendy? Wendy's going to be followed up by Gary Brook.
Hi, Wendy Brassfield, 383 Olympia. I'm here to talk about the setbacks in the livestock. Again, I agree with Eric and Mr. Nino about the setbacks. If they were to be 1,200 feet, there's no way that I could keep my property. I was unaware of the grandfathered ordinance that if we already have animals on the property, they can stay. However, now I'm more worried about in 2 years, if we sell the property, the new people are not going to be able to have animals. And I think last year I spent $200,000 on a 6-stall barn. Victor approved the plans. And now when I go to sell, those people won't be able to put any animals in the barn. And so that's going to decrease my value of my property. So I'm just really worried about the setbacks. I need more clarification on, are we talking leafy greens and 1,200 feet back is an apple orchard. Anthony's across the street from me. Is that considered the food safety? I think that things need to be put in black and white in front of us. Is an apple orchard the same thing as leafy greens and a 1,200-foot setback or 400 feet? But again, my lot is only 300 feet wide by 600 feet deep. I could never meet that 1,200-foot setback from the apple orchard. So it's property value. It's in 2 years if I want to sell it. I have this beautiful barn, this beautiful piece of property, and the new people won't be able to put any animals in the barn. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And after Gary, we're gonna have Carolyn Noble.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is actually Gary Tenbrook. I understand it's been messed with since I was a young kid, so don't worry about it. So my name is Gary Tenbrook. I'm at 383 Olympia. Thank you for seeing us up here today. Like my wife said, we bought that beautiful property. We decided to move out of the city to come into a beautiful area that's nice and quiet, that we could sit there and raise our livestock, do what we wanted with the horses. Yes, we understand that now that we have this quote-unquote setback, which we don't understand, and of course the leafy greens. This gentleman that has the beekeeping incident, I've never seen hardly any bees in that whole area. And on top of that is, I used to work for the state, and if you don't have EpiPen or whatever, and you know that you're allergic to bees, then you shouldn't be around bees, or you should carry it with you at all times, period. Because working for the State Department, working for Caltrans, if you knew that you're out there working in all that environment, traffic, agricultural, bees, and everything else like that, and you got stung, it was your responsibility to make sure you had your EpiPen. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Carolyn Noble, followed up by Daryl Lund.
Thank you. My name is Carolyn Columber Noble, and I live in Tres Pinos. My family are Donner Party descendants from San Juan Bautista. My husband Jason's family settled here in 1873. We live on the remaining lands of his family's ranch behind Immaculate Conception Church. We truly enjoy living in the country and feel blessed to be so privileged and do not take this for granted. Our neighbors to the southwest are established ag operations. If you were to move Title 13 forward, it would mean we could no longer graze our pastures with horses or cattle, as has been done here for so long before us. Imagine that. Both of our families have been here for approximately 150 years, and we would be told we are no longer afforded this right of our zoning. Literally, almost none of our property, over 31 acres, would be usable after this. What do you suggest we do then? We must still pay taxes, we must still insure it and maintain it, but we cannot use it for the purpose it has been used for about 150 years. This doesn't seem right, and what seems worse, it is on the agenda and considered by this body as something credible and worth voting on without notifying the actual people of this county who will be affected by it. We want to work together and find an amicable solution to the problem. This is not the way to do it. It will divide people who have been good friends and neighbors. Please find a better way than this to try and solve a problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Daryl, and then following, Daryl's gonna pass? Okay, so Carl Scow. Wait, I'm confused. Daryl.
Good evening, Commissioners. I very much believe in what Mr. Nino had to say about devaluing the properties, and I just think what I have read here this evening and heard is kind of a jump the wrong way, and it'll devalue many, many, many of the people in this room's property. as well as mine. So my opinion is it needs to be refined really a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carl, followed up by Lana West.
Good evening, everyone. Carl Scow, Southside Road. First off, I'd like to say every time I open my tax bill from the county, I get 2 envelopes in them. Everyone says it's a right to farm, all the disclosures on it, why we're farming. We have a 70-acre farm that we lease out 30 acres to organics, have for 15 years. It goes through an inspection every year from their certification firm. Adjoining that, my niece leases the other 30 acres that she runs cattle on, little heifers for the season. We have a small buffer zone in between, drainage areas that are in compliance with our growers' requirements, and everything has worked fine. We moved the cattle over during the wet time of the season, and they've grown leafy greens for 15 years. It appears to me that staff may never have farmed to come up with compliance issues such as this. If you actually look at what 1,200 feet is from a property line, I'll clarify, a 5-acre parcel runs about 530 by 530 feet. That means 2 parcels are completely not allowed to have any large animals on them, and the 3rd parcel is already taken out by 25%, all along the line. What is that fair to those property owners on their properties, because one person is trying to farm and someone has come up with a regulation that sets up 1,200 feet, when we're able to do this year after year, being inspected by the organic certification firm that our grower uses, with cattle right next door, probably 50 feet away, correct drainages, correct roadways and such, but it is able to be done. And it should not be up to our county to tell people that they cannot do anything with their complete property because one person has already grown next to them for 3 years. We are that grower. That means our neighbor may not be able to do what they want to with their property. A reasonable setback would be a reasonable setback, but 1,200 feet, 400 feet is over 90%, as the president of the Farm Bureau said, it takes out the parcel next to you for having any animals. So we really need to look at what we're trying to accomplish and deny this going on, because it's just a little bit of overkill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lana?
Hi, thank you. I'm Lana West. I live out in Tres Pinos with most of the people here. I moved out here from 2000 from the San Jose area, but I've been all over the world. I'm originally spent most of my time in Sacramento, where they have a huge feral population, same with Los Angeles, and we had groups of people that would come together and help these animals. And I'm here in support of feral stakes rescue. The thing is when I first moved out here, I had strange feral cats jumping into my screen doors in the middle of the night. They knew there was food in my house. They knew the screen window was in the back part of the house. They could sneak in, crash through the window, the screen, and break in my house in the middle of the night. They were all coming over from the Tres Pinos church. It took me several years to figure this out because I could hear the crying, but I didn't know where it was coming from until I one night heard it well enough. I walked over to the church. There's the church, the main building closest to my house, then the middle building, and then there's this house what they use for the office. And there was like 20 cats, kittens, on the ground of the porch, and they obviously have housing underneath that porch, and they were meowing and crying at the window of the person's back door. So I originally started and went over to the church, the parishioner that was originally there. This is 20 years ago or 25 years ago, because I bought the property in 2000. He didn't really want anything to do with it, and he said, yeah, we have feral cat problems, this, that, and the other. But in the meantime, these cats were sick, ill, and diseased, and they were coming over on my property spraying. And I had my son, which was a cat. I don't have children, I have animals. I've always rescued animals since I was a little girl. Horses, dogs, cats, reptiles, birds, whatever. I don't, discriminate. They always find me. Anyway, and that's the thing, the church cats know that I'm there. They come, and the thing is my father, I only came to this town for one reason. I just was gonna put my mom and my father to rest. I was waiting for them to have their life. Once they were done, I needed to be there for them in their last days. And now this has finally happened. My father went in January. So I am free to go, but the thing is since I moved in here, I have trapped, neutered, and fixed over 80 cats from this property at the church. A lady came up with the mobile home and she just dropped like 80 tuxedos. Those are black and white long hairs. They don't have any business out in a foxtail surrounding. I just thought I got through 3 litters just now from June of this last year. And I have them all on my property and I'm trying to get them help. Then I thought I was all clear, and my father died in January, so in the meantime I'm having the feral church cats come bombard into my cars. They go in my cars and they have litters in them. They went in my barn, in my boat, in my van, and my truck. So anyway,
I'm sorry, but that's your time.
Okay, we do need help in this, and that's what I'm here for, to get help and ordinance for the feral, because it's the Hollister and Tres Pinos.
Jason Noble, followed up by Heidi Nelson.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here this evening representing the San Benito County Association of Realtors. First, I'm sorry. I'm sorry this is falling in your lap. I'm sorry that staff had to bring this before you. I think credit where credit is due. Please thank your supervisors for directing them to bring this before you and us. The Association of Realtors speak opposed to Title 13 for many of the same reasons I brought before you on the minimum lot size for parcel subdivisions. Again, I wish to point out that not nearly enough of those property owners affected by this agenda item are aware of what you and the Board of Supervisors are contemplating doing to their property rights and values. Only the legally required notices have been given. Minimal public outreach on such a significant issue has been attempted. At the recent Ag Element meeting in April of local farmers, ranchers, and working group, there was no swelling of support for this item. Beyond staff taking the item presented to the Ag Element Committee, the comments received, and coming back with something far worse than what was presented, what other public outreach has been done to notify and work with the stakeholders to be impacted, not just farmers, but the property owners? Questions about this include, will current property owners be grandfathered? Some of this was answered by Victor, but will current property owners be grandfathered in for their current use, or must they cease and desist within a certain time period? Please define what runoff control systems are. At whose expense will these be installed and maintained? How do you intend to notify owners if this is adopted, and that when they sell, the new owner does not have the same rights of use as this owner had? How do you see that impacting these folks' property values in the future? What studies have been performed to make you aware of the fiscal impacts on the county and property owners? Currently, how many property owners, including farmers, ranchers, and small private property owners, are impacted by this? If a property owner is required to conform with the 1,200-foot setback, is the adjoining established ag operation going to pay prorated property taxes and insurance for the land no longer able to be used by the private property owner? Who will be responsible for maintaining those privately owned lands? The ag operation? Will they mow or disc? Do they sign indemnification and hold harmless agreements with the landowner? Have you considered that not all established ag operations will remain the same use? By this, I mean, the land across the street from me is a vineyard. It was row crop before. Some of the vineyard next to that has already been pulled. Some remains in operation. What if more of the vineyards get pulled? Now my neighbor must conform with the 1,200-foot setbacks because, as you stated in item number 13.01.010B3, reciprocity is emphasized here. Regardless if you're growing a food crop or raising animals, the burden fairly applies to both sides. Do enough of the property owners know that they may be restricted in use of their lands or face loss of use or income from their property if they change their production uses?
Thank you.
2 more sentences, can I complete?
No, I'm sorry.
All right,
It
thank
wouldn't
you,
be
sir.
fair to the others. Thank you, though.
Heidi, followed up by Denise Lang.
Good evening, Heidi Nelson Boyd, 771 Santa Ana Valley Road. I'm going to be very brief. I think the majority has spoken to the same comments that I have. 1,200-foot setback that limits not only maybe the animal farmer, but the crop grower as well. Both parties are going to be limited. Both parties are going to sacrifice. It's just going to be who comes first. I think it all needs to be completely rethought. I think it's kind of like taking a sledgehammer to a gnat. You're trying to protect one thing, but at the same time, you're killing something else. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Denise Lang. I live off Riverside Road. I live on 5.5 acres that's zoned AP. I moved to Hollister 22 years ago. Before I started my family, we specifically sought out our land with no CC&Rs because we wanted the flexibility. We knew we wanted our children to be in 4-H and FFA, and we didn't want the limitations that existed on a lot of the agriculture lots in Hollister. Some of them were limited to 1 livestock per acre or limited to landscaping, for example. We've been a part of the 4-H program for the last 13 years. I can tell you firsthand how valuable the program has been to my children and so many other children in this county. I echo a lot of the sentiments around property value, setbacks. For example, my lot is 370 feet by 600. I would not be able to comply. I have a lot of questions around what is a food crop. I live adjacent to an olive grove that obviously is used for food purposes as well as vineyards. I also have questions on how the limitations on livestock were set. My daughter raises dairy goats. We have a herd of 30 registered dairy goats, and I think the limitation was 1 per acre. 1 dairy goat can have 4 babies quite easily, and so I just think these limitations are a bit restrictive and not really in touch with actual farming, hobby farming. We raise for our own freezer as well as for production and for the freezer. I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous. But I also echo the sentiments around my property value. I'm very concerned over empty lots next door or what should happen, and what happens when we want to change what we do, or should we sell our property? Thank you for your considerations.
Thank you.
And we're gonna move over through Zoom. Stacy McGrady, you've been allowed to unmute yourself. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you, Chair and Board. I live in District 1. We've lived here for over 20 years. I'm not going to repeat everything that's already been said, but I do have concerns about the ordinance. I think the ordinance, the way it's presented, is a bit confusing as we're combining ag issues, livestock, with dangerous dogs and kennel requirements. So my suggestion would be to separate those 2 issues. And if they were separated, I do strongly support a spay-neuter clause for all dogs and cats. We can go into more details about what that should look like later, but it's pretty imperative. And then the other thing that I thought was missing from the ordinance is, although the Zoom didn't pick up until we were already into slide number 6, so forgive me if I missed something, but there's nothing about maintaining roosters, and it's pretty common knowledge that anybody who's got more than, I don't know, 50 or 100 roosters, that they're not being maintained for legal purposes. And I would sure like to see an ordinance that covers how many roosters can be maintained on property. So I think this will have devastating effects to property owners and small property owners. And like the previous speakers have said, it needs to be reworked. But thank you so much.
Thank you, and just by way of a side comment, we will be covering the crowing fowl ordinance as part of the zoning in item 5.1.
Okay, and we're gonna move on to Paul Ravella. You've been allowed to unmute yourself. Paul, are you still with us? Joe.
Joe who?
Joe Tanasha.
Oh, yeah, my name is Joe Tanasha. I'm one of these farmers that do it for a living. I started as a small farmer in San Benito County. Some consider me large, but I'm only 6'2". I have kids that have been in 4-H. I deal with small animals. I have orchards, I have row crop, and I've done cattle. And this ordinance needs to go to the Ag Element Committee, the stakeholders, and get a working over. We had nothing to do with this ordinance. I commend the staff for trying to get educated on ag issues. And they've done a good job, but there's so much that everybody doesn't understand. LGMA is a self-governing organization of agricultural people in conjunction with the state. You also have state ag, food safety issues, and FDA issues, because the Food Drug Administration now has food safety nationwide. And I have to deal with all these things. And I have to deal with all you guys having small parcels and being next to my ranches. And it needs to be looked at. It can be worked on. It can be done. But this is not the way to do it. I'm sorry I'm not there tonight, but I would invite any of the commissioners that would like to come out and talk and have a ride around and see what goes on in an operation. My kids were in FFA and 4-H. I was raised that way. Things have changed in the world, and they're going to keep changing. Wendy's, Nob Hill, Safeway, they don't care about your animals. They don't care about me, for that matter. But what they do care about is if they can come after you. I've been through an FDA E. coli deal. You do not want the federal, and then they show up with federal and state inspectors, and they were on my ranches for over 3 days. And an enema wouldn't even describe what they did to us as any thing good. But I think the commission needs to kick this back. I invite any of you guys to contact me at any time for a ride around or a discussion. I don't mind having people ride with me to learn what's going on out there. And I don't think this is the way to preserve ag in San Benito County. It's a way to get rid of it. And I don't foresee that being the way to go. It doesn't affect leafy greens. I have this problem with tomatoes, peppers, and even the orchards. Food safety is food safety. LGMA is just one arm. It stands for Leafy Greens Marketing Agreement. It's a marketing agreement that the growers put together with the state for leafy greens. But there's multiple crops, and the crop list is getting longer and longer, and the organizations, state and federal, that are getting involved is getting bigger and bigger.
Thank you.
So I think it needs to go back to the ag stakeholders. I'm sorry, I don't have a clock on this Zoom, so I can't tell
Yeah,
what I talk.
I realize that. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna try again. Paul Ravella.
Hi, yes, thank you for allowing me to present to the Planning Commission. In addition to all the other points that have been previously read, I asked the Planning Commission to not recommend approval of this ordinance, these amendments in this form. They are practically unenforceable. This county, according to the 2023 crop report, has over 500,000 acres of pasture or rangeland, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000 acres of commercial cropland. Are you capable of enforcing every dispute of these buffer setbacks? Any dispute, by the way, according to this version of the ordinance, is required to be mediated by a committee of the county ag commissioner, the director of the UC cooperative extension for the county council, the planning director, and the public works director. I don't know exactly what all of those folks do on a day-to-day basis, but I guarantee you they've got better and more things to do than mediate neighbor disputes over whether cattle are within 1,200 feet of a neighboring commercial crop organization. I asked this planning commission to not get into the neighbor dispute business and to save the ag commissioner, county council, planning director, and public works director from being mediators in the multitude of disputes that you guys will be inundated with the second this goes into effect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and then Devi Rao, you've been allowed to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. My name is Devi Rao. I'm the interim county director for our University of California Cooperative Extension Office in San Benito County. The 4-H program is through our office, and the university owns an approximately 10-acre 4-H farm on Nash Road in Hollister that was donated to us by a local resident. Our 4-H program at the farm supports youth development, teaching kids responsibility and animal husbandry. The 4-H farm is a place where kids who don't have their own property can still have the experience of raising an animal and learning to take responsibility. I'm not sure if the livestock on our farm came first or if the adjacent row crop farm came first. If these setbacks were put into place at the 4-H farm, it would affect the ability for youth to have livestock at the farm and would limit our ability to serve the youth of San Benito County. Thank you.
Thank you, and we're going to move back to in chambers. Ken Griffin, please approach the podium. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I speak here today on behalf of the Agricultural Commissioner's Office, as I am the acting Agricultural Commissioner. I also sit on the Agricultural Element Stakeholder Committee. Everything that's been said, I won't bother to repeat. I think we see a little bit of pushback on what's before you today, and rightfully so in my opinion. I would like to say that this ordinance so far is flawed, but it's not. I've been part of it. It's green. It's just getting started. What concerns me with the thought of passage of this is that what was brought up a little bit by Mr. Ravella is the county's stance at being put in potential litigation because of a take. We're going to be exercising a take. It's very dangerous, very expensive, number one. And then number two, the uninvestigated portion of what it's going to do to property tax value. This county, the only source of income is property taxes. And so far, with discussions with stakeholders, people invested in the property tax collection of this county, it doesn't really have any short-term outlook at this point because it's been uninvestigated of having benefit, meaning raising value. So that's very concerning to not only the committee, should be concerning to you as the diocese, as well as it is to everybody in the community. So I'll just leave it short and sweet. At this point, I would recommend a motion to table this for future, kick it back to the committee, is also maybe start your own committee, subcommittee to help join. I know there was at least one commissioner at all the meetings. Let's start a committee. Let's get around this. Let's get after it after you get it back to us and you all and the public, and we'll come back with something that's finished down the road. I won't end without saying working with staff, the public, and you all has been a joy, but we're just getting started. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, I have no more cards in chambers and I have no more hands via Zoom.
All right, thank you. So bringing it back to the commission. Discussion within the commission, I guess I'll kick it off by saying it's been educational, to say the least, hearing all the public comments within chambers and via Zoom, and also the staff presentation. I'm hearing a theme. I'm hearing 2 themes at least. One, obviously loud and clear, is about the setbacks. It seems clear to me that the 1,200-foot setback seems problematic. And the other theme that I'm hearing is the apiary maybe is not well thought out, or at least I shouldn't say not very well thought out, but perhaps is problematic based on what I'm hearing from professionals in the industry. In any event, I'm interested in other thoughts on those and other topics. So Commissioner Scagliotti, perhaps?
Sure, I'll take it. I think this needs to go back to the ag element. This is totally, excuse me, staff, for what I'm going to say, but this has a lot of garbage in it that we don't need. It needs to go back to the ag element. We need a lot of time, like our ag commissioner said, to refine this and get this right. We keep pushing things and we keep pushing things. It has to stop. So I say we send this back to the ag element and table it for this evening. Thank you.
Commissioner Gibson, your thoughts?
Yes, I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank staff for working on this. I think there needs to be a lot of work. I would definitely like to see a mandatory spay-neuter section. City of Menifee has a rather long one. I think it's 4 pages. Santa Cruz County has one that's 2 pages. I would appreciate if staff would work with the feral cat rescue folks and maybe get their opinion, since they're the experts in the field. I can't even read my own writing. I'm concerned with removing livestock from the residential portions because when I was a youngster, I lived in the city limits, but I was fortunate to have a neighbor in the county, up other side of Sunset, that was in the county, and I was able to keep my sheep there. So I think it's important that we don't hurt the 4-H and FFA programs because we think we're doing something good. Government isn't the best at that. So I think we need to review that portion. I think that we need to have the ag element stakeholder group take a look at the definitions of large and small livestock, whether sheep and goats and the smaller animals belong in there. They also should look at the number of animals you can have per acre, even if we want that limitation. They should also review the exemptions. Same with the small livestock. And the setbacks, it seems, should just go away and come up with a different scheme. One of them could be, if we're doing this to protect crops, one way to do it would be to wait and get the data to figure out where the prime farmland and the farmland of local importance is. Perhaps come up with a new land use designation for those properties, and then come up with a new minimum acreage, allow one house and no livestock. So if the farmers, for some reason, need to sell their property, whoever buys it knows they can't have livestock. We've protected the row crop, and whoever buys it knows that they can't have livestock, so that they can't say we're hurting them because it's an existing policy. I also am concerned with the apiary ordinance. Without bees, there's no humans. Whether or not that's a bad thing, I don't know, but I don't certainly want to hurt the beekeepers. I myself have had bees on and off. Not the best beekeeper, I don't have any right now. But I would like to refer staff to work with local beekeepers. I know there's the fella out by the range. There's also the Gilroy Beekeepers Association. Work with them to try to get a workable ordinance. We certainly don't want to burden beekeepers because we need them. So the sections that would apply to the ag element stakeholder group, I would like to kick it back to them with no time frame, because I think we need to slow walk this so that we do it right, because obviously we've stirred a hornet's nest by just throwing it out there without a lot of deep thought and review first. Hopefully we've learned a lesson here. Maybe, hopefully. And then as far as the bees, work with the beekeepers, and the spay, work with the feral rescue. And that's my recommendation, that we just continue it indefinitely until we've conquered these issues.
Commissioner Ringhagen, your thoughts?
I would echo those sentiments. I also, the 1,200-foot setback is, I have to understand why how it came up to be such a big number. It really needs to go back to the ag element. There's a lot of things that need to be worked out, I think so. Also, I'm very much in favor of the animal spading. There needs to be some regulations with that. And in regards to the beekeeper stuff, you know, bees are such a big issue. We need to work with the beekeepers and not just work with them, I think, is the best thing for me to say. But my final thought is that, yeah, this needs to go back to the ag element to work out some of these issues. I don't know how anybody could have a 1,200-foot setback and still have 5 acres.
Right.
And those are my thoughts.
Yeah, my only issue with continuing it is scheduling, because we've already canceled the July meeting, And the next bunch of Wednesdays are in the middle of summer, and we all have kind of, I imagine, pretty full schedules already, so it might be problematic, but I mean, that's not a good reason for not doing what needs to be done. I wonder if there's a way to get some of it moved forward, even if we can't move forward the 1,200-foot setback and the apiary. Can we separate some of this? I don't know. I mean, Stacy McGrady was making a point about, I think it was her, who was making a point about, you know, some of this doesn't seem like it should be all bundled together. Is there a way to do that? I'm kind of looking at Sean here.
You could. It might be complicated to sit here and do that. So I would ask staff as well if they think that's feasible.
Because I'm thinking, you know, I mean, I would like to, like the kennel regulations and things like that. I mean, we want to move those forward, I think. I think there's, I'm not hearing opposition to those sorts of things, but the things that we have consensus on, I don't want to drag our feet on, but then these other things kind of do need more work.
Chair, may I suggest
Please.
that we give it back to the ag element and staff, and when they have it properly done, taking a lot of this stuff out, clean it up, make it so it's comprehensible. Whenever staff says they're ready, they bring it back to us and we public notice it. It could take months. That's fine. Let's do it right. Let's not push this through like everything else has been pushed through in the last month or so. Let's get this done right. Give staff the opportunity to take their time and do it properly with everything in one, like somebody says, one good bill. Do it right.
Well, my point is, though, that some of it really is done right, and some of it, you know, looking at it, the I's have been dotted, the T's have been crossed, and it's not controversial, and it's just a shame to, in my opinion, just a shame to hold back on those pieces of it for the sake of the pieces that really do. But I understand your point, and you know, if it's all part of Title 13, then, you know, we can't really pass it piecemeal, so maybe we really don't have an option.
You could. No, you could pass it piecemeal. Or you could make a recommendation to parse things out.
Well,
it's up to the commission.
Well, you know, I mean, I'm one voice here. If three of us want to hold off on it, then that's what we're going to do.
I think this is too important.
Yeah.
As we can see, all the folks that are here today, to just pass. I really think it's my thought that these people are here spending their time here to make a point.
Oh, yeah, I definitely don't want to pass it as written. No doubt about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chair, I would definitely err on the side of caution with such things. These are laws, and so, you know, they should be well thought out. And
Perhaps with the exceptions of the livestock and the apiary, we could bring back all the rest of it in August. And then whenever the ag element stakeholder group tackles the livestock and we get the mandatory spay-neuter done, then we can deal with those sections.
Okay. Meanwhile,
that might be an option.
Meanwhile, could we consider recommending to the board that they not proceed with this? Specifically recommending that they not proceed?
Correct. I think we should.
Can we have a motion to that effect?
Sure. I move to continue the item indefinitely, providing staff direction to work on a mandatory spay-neuter section, rework the apiary section, and kick the livestock section back to the ag element stakeholder group.
Can I make a friendly amendment to that?
Yes.
Can I add to that motion that we also recommend that the board specifically not proceed with this as written?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Accepted.
Thank you. Is there a second to that?
Chair.
I second that.
Generally, you either recommend or you continue an item. If you're recommending denial or approval, that goes up to the board, whereas a continuance stays with this body.
Okay.
So we should continue it.
It sounds like to me like you want to continue it, yes.
So will you?
But you
take
can
back your
parse out
friendly-
You made the
portions
motion, so
and
is it the motion?
decide that way too.
Well, he made the motion then, so,
So you'll recall your friendly amendment?
okay.
Okay. Then, do we have a? Oh,
Is there a
sorry.
second then?
I'll second.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes 4-0. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 5.2.
Thank you all
I'm
for
sorry,
coming.
5.1, thank you. Thank you all for coming. 5.1, may we have this is the resolution on Title 25,
Could we, yeah, can we take
oh
a
yes,
5 minute?
yeah, let's take a recess for just a few minutes, thank you.
How come did it got warm in here? Is it my? Ariel?
Ariel?
Can we fix the transmittal sheet, because it still says I'm the chair on the transmittals?
Oh,
And it's happened to the last.
okay, it is now 7:36, and I'm calling this special meeting of the San Benito County Planning Commission back to order. And we are ready to consider item 5.1. Adopt the attached resolution recommending the Board of Supervisors adopt the attached proposed draft ordinance amending and replacing in its entirety San Benito County Title 25. And I won't read the rest of it because I know we'll be getting a very detailed presentation. So please proceed. Ariel, thank you much.
Hi, good evening, Chair, fellow commissioners, members of the public. Thanks so much for staying tonight. It's going to be a tough act to follow after Victor, but I'll do my best. Wish I could have some more coffee, but that's okay. I just really quickly, you're going to see that a good portion, like maybe like 80% of this is very familiar. We have gone through this. We went through a series of meetings last year in 2024. The Planning Commission actually had recommended in November it to go to the board. The board heard a good portion of these items. They directed staff to, remove certain things entirely to bring back for adoption. And then when we did bring it back for adoption in March, there was actually a lot of additional items they wanted to be added or reviewed and brought back through the Planning Commission before hearing it again. So you'll hear some of these things are familiar and some are new, and I'll kind of hit on a couple of those. Our public hearing procedures and noticing, one of the main things is that we wanted to expand the noticing requirements, not just 300 feet, but 1,000 feet. And really that's to make sure that we are informing the public a little bit better than we have been in the past. And this actually exceeds state requirements. And so we want to kind of go above and beyond that. It had been presented before to be a 1-year waiting period. That was something that was brought back to the board, and they requested it be a 2 years. They also wanted a little bit more requirements in there that we couldn't get around that. So I apologize, there's a typo in this, but what's amended in the code in front of you is 2 years. Appeals, expansions, and non-conforming uses and of structures and sites. Basically, and this is across most jurisdictions, they want to limit the expansion of non-conforming uses. One of the things that we did here is allow a process that if someone did want to expand, that they could come to Planning Commission to review and either approve or deny that possible expansion for that non-conforming use. The reason behind this addition of code, and you've seen it before, was really there's existing businesses that have been around for decades, and business might be doing well, and so we want to maybe have an opportunity that if business is doing well, even though maybe in the past 3 decades something has changed with the zoning, it's not an existing use, that they still have an opportunity to expand. We want businesses to grow here, so that was why this section was added. I know this was important in our last discussion, and I just want to say it was here. It is in our zoning code. Possibly we should maybe move it to our animal code, but we do have a crowing fowl permits, and there is a limitation on how many roosters there can be. And what we did in here is we updated that the enforcement in there. There was a lot of concern about cockfighting around the county. I think it's not just our county, but lots of counties. So we really looked at permit standards that for housing our crowing fowl, and then really making sure it was very clear and concise that cockfighting is not allowed, and that there is penalties and enforcement that would happen if caught. Development plan review threshold. So this part you had seen before. So it increased in certain areas, and our commercial activities, new buildings or additions or modifications, it increased from 2,500 square feet to 5,000 square feet, with fewer than 100 people or 100 vehicle trips to be expected, to be able to be permitted under a building permit and not require an additional planning permit. And then what required a minor development plan review or an administrative permit would increase from 2,500 to 5,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet range. And then would require a major development plan review or a major use permit that would have to go to Planning Commission, like we are here tonight, for review and approval, would increase to above 10,000 square feet. And just if you hadn't tuned in before last year on some of this, the reasoning being is that we wanted to provide, again, opportunity for smaller businesses that were just starting out to not have to do have to pay planning fees and have a little bit more streamlined process. Now, if they ever expanded beyond that smaller operation of 5,000, square feet, or larger than 100 people or 100 trips per day, then they would have to go through that planning process. It's necessary for them to go through that planning process, but we wanted to, where we could, help businesses grow in this community. So this was one of the avenues we had looked at. We also brought it to our tourism committee and had some good feedback through them as well, and recommended in favor of this to the Planning Commission. Our land use tables, you'll see as you looked at the attachments, we updated certain commercial uses to then be in line with those development plan review thresholds. And so some of those things included like bed and breakfast establishments, hotels or motels, brewery, distillery, wineries. We updated some of our charging station regulations, limiting only permitting up to 10, and then after that, require some planning. Sale of agricultural products, including tack and feed supplies. We kind of added that in again, really trying to align with our county. Off-site tasting rooms was added in, short-term rentals. We've done some work on our commercial kennels. I'll actually get into some of the development standards shortly here. Sport shooting, hunting clubs, riding clubs, golf courses, low-impact camping. We had updated that ordinance actually last year, but what we did was just making sure that that reflected in the tables. In our residential zones, one of the key changes that you'll see that wasn't presented last year in the beginning of this year to the board was removing the single-family R1 district. So it doesn't remove single-family housing, it just removes that district. So under the residential mixed housing district, it allows for both single-family and also multifamily, and then it provided a few more regulations. So they having a maximum of 25% development of single family, and then the rest would be mixed use. And then additionally, it required that if the development falls within a half mile of, U.S. highway or state highway or one of our arterial county roads as mapped in the general plan, it would require not less than 10 percent of that development to have a commercial component. So again, really working to try to get more mixed-use types of development when we do see new development coming in. This was something that we did work through our housing advisory ad hoc, and that is run by our senior planner, Stephanie Reck, and it includes 2 supervisors to kind of work on different housing related code, including our inclusionary ordinance. And so this was, through some looking at some other jurisdictions like Morgan Hill or others, and seeing how they do mixed use. We came up with this, to be considered tonight. Our commercial zones, we added just a few more items such as brewery or distillery or wineries and tasting rooms, farm equipment sales with accessory repairs and services, sale of fruit and vegetables and roadside stands, tasting rooms, indoor shooting range, pet shops, short-term rentals, commercial retail cannabis. Our cannabis code had previously been adopted, and so and it's in other titles, but this, the tables need to be updated to reflect those changes that were previously adopted. So everything from one code section to the next all aligns. In our industrial zones, again, just kind of expanding. Brewery, distillery, winery may include tasting rooms, indoor shooting range, update the cultivation, distribution, manufacturing, testing, and retail of cannabis. And then in our public, quasi-public table, construction, demolition of materials, sorting and management, energy and gas recovery, recycling, buyback, salvage, repair, and restoration of all household goods with outdoor operations, wood and green waste grindings, household hazardous waste. Basically, a lot of recycling, different variety of activities. I just want to make a note, basically, for the commission that on May 21st, you guys had made a recommendation, and the table hadn't been updated and what was in there. And so I just want the public to know that that table in your recommendation move forward, that it would include what you had already recommended on May 21st. And so and this is just a notation. So getting into our general development design standards, 2507, we added additional site and architectural standards for all our residential zones, and I will get into some of that. We looked at fire resistant materials and constructions, fence design standards, and sidewalk design standards. Some of this went through our housing advisory ad hoc, and then our architectural design standards actually went through as well to be reviewed. In addition to that, my apologies. I told you I need more coffee. And then we added site design standards into our multiple residential for corner lots to require duets, and as I discussed, our maximum of 25% single family units in a development, and then including the commercial component. We added the site design and architectural standards for commercial sites, and this was taken to the tourism committee and reviewed. We increased the gross floor area for accessory dwelling units and agricultural buildings from 1,000 feet to 2,500 square feet. This was just something that needed to be updated from our 2022 code updates. And then we did reference our California Building Code requirements for ADA parking. So now getting into the development, general development standards. What we had them already existing in our commercial and industrial and our public, quasi-public, and then we added it additionally to the commercial uses. So if you're reading in 2503 table, it's broken out into ag uses, industrial, and commercial for those zones. And so if you're looking at that for our commercial uses, in AR, AP, R, and RT, we added that people want to come see, want to visit, and part of that includes good architectural design. So in looking at that, the goal had been, you know, what is the county's heritage? What are we known for? And trying to maybe, stick with some of those themes. And so, if this wasn't a great naming convention, you're happy to rename it, but staff kind of started with these three. And so the first one we called early farmstead theme. Those characteristics include a primary building evoking a farmhouse or a secondary building, emulating a barn with various outbuildings, which can include accessory structures such as a windmill or a water tank, and that kind of pastoral feel. And we included, the Victorian or colonial revival or other similar periods as an idea for the main building. And then, including like lap siding and shingles and stucco and massing and roof forms to accompany that. We tried to include some kind of photos. These are kind of portray representation, but they're not prescriptive. And we did try to use some stuff that was around the county. The next one we called the working cattle or horse ranch. And those characteristics included one or two major structures with smaller outlying structures and open spaces. Typical building types and styles included barns or traditional Central California style, maybe with some steeper roof pitches, farmhouse in any traditional style, weathering steel, or wood or other rustic finishes. We included a few photos of that as some examples from around the county. Our last style that we provided was adding old California village or small town. Those characteristics included maybe small scale buildings arranged to enclose the outdoor public space. Typical building type styles and features include individual small scale buildings, variable roofs including gables or Dutch gables or Spanish influence, and then clapboard siding or bare wood, casement windows, arcades and fronting buildings. There's a few examples, coming from our Tres Pinos area, and also the city of San Juan as some examples of that you can see around the county. And then additionally, I just want to add that we did include in there, and it had been one of the recommendations from the tourism committee, is that if someone came in and they wanted to choose an alternative style and they felt, that they could provide that, but it would need to come, through the planning commission. And so this wasn't you have to do one of these completely, but it provided a few different options, and then alternatively, through planning commission, alternative design reviews could be approved. Additional development and design standards we looked at was parking standards for cannabis. We have been, since adopting ACO, we've received a multitude of applications, about half dozen, I believe. And one of the things we were realizing is that we needed something a little bit more specific on having requirements for parking standards for cannabis or agricultural activities. Cannabis is now permitted in ag zoning, and it does require some parking standards and screening and fencing, and so we added some of that into there. Permanent outdoor storage is limited to 200 square feet. And we included some standards for height, screening, and fire requirements, and we added standards for motor vehicle repair and storage in residential areas. that particular item we presented before, and it really came about through code enforcement. And so realizing that we needed to maybe have a few standards in there to help with addressing that. This is, you've all seen before last year, but for those who haven't, we added modular homes to ADU design standards. This is allowed by state. We increased up to 2 ADUs allowed per lot. However, that's limited to if you have water, septic, if you can meet the setback requirements. So it doesn't necessarily mean that anyone in the county could have to, because your particular lot might not be able to support that. Requirements for ADUs with an attached garage, and requirements for junior ADUs. The mobile home and recreational vehicles, this was the same as before. There weren't any changes provided. The pet shops, commercial kennels, and hobby kennels, this were all requirements that we had reviewed previously, and so there weren't any changes to this as presented before you. We just made reference that this requirement is under Title 13, and as you saw tonight, that will be continued to a date uncertain. But just, it will point to Title 13, and whatever regulations come up with there, that would be what's required. Renewable energy facilities, we had previously before reducing the height from 20 feet to 15 feet. This is to be a little bit more in line with sections of our general plan and view sheds and the aesthetics. And so that was why that was proposed previously and still in there today. We did add, and this is new, reference to standards for battery storage. The movable tiny home sections hasn't changed from what was presented before. Short-term rental, again, no changes. Commercial sports shooting and indoor shooting ranges. This actually went through a good haul. We had some different meetings, including with commissioners and supervisor and our sheriff's department. We reached out to those that operate in other counties' shooting ranges and safety office. There's act as safety officers in shooting ranges, and looked at other ordinances, and through that process provided what's before you today. Just a few highlights of some of those include minimum lot size is 40 acres, 200 setbacks to property line, 1,500 setback to sensitive uses such as occupied dwellings, and then 1 mile setbacks to sensitive uses such as schools or churches. Siting and operational standards, including range safety officer, range rules, on-site security requirements, and additional county requirements. And that section got very long, our safety and operation standards. Definitions, won't get into them, but we added additional definitions. The cleanup stayed the same, just some, director reference and making sure nothing in there said municipal code, and it was San Benito County code. And so my recommendation tonight is the Planning Commission adopt the attached resolution that recommends the Board of Supervisors adopt the attached proposed draft ordinance provisions to amend the attached proposed draft ordinance, including Title 25 Code Sections 2501, 2502, 2503, 2505, 2507, 2508, 2509, and then of course, if there are any questions or comments or revisions we would like to propose tonight, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you. I do have a large number of flags in here that I want to go through and ask you about. But I also don't want to delay the public comment section, so I think I'll hold off on the bulk of my questions until after public comment when we're going through our discussion. But I do have one question that I did want to ask you about ahead of time. I was puzzled by the venue issue. Looking at the various tables, venues appear to be either permitted outright or allowed with just an administrative permit under all circumstances. And under no circumstances do they require so much as a conditional use permit. So it worries me that if somebody were to come into the county and propose something like Oracle Park, it wouldn't even come to the Planning Commission. And I know we talked about this briefly offline, and you assured me that that wouldn't be the case, but I just want to get it on the record in public that, you know, that wouldn't happen.
Yes, and that is one of the changes we could recommend. You know, like I discussed, you know, the small, less than 100 people, it's not adding, you know, more than 5,000 square feet, that's permitted, and then over that, we had made it as an administrative use permit. Under 2502, and reviewing authorities, the director has the authority to move anything up to Planning Commission. And so if an Oracle Park was to come in, that would automatically, through that discretion, be moved up. However, we could easily just change it to conditional use permit and handle it that way as well. And I'm happy to make those amendments.
Thanks. Other questions from the commission for staff?
No, not right now.
Okay, let's go ahead and open up for public comment then.
Okay, Heidi Nelson, please approach the podium. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi there, Heidi Nelson Boyd, and I'm commenting on the agenda item 5.1. I'm a broker and owner of a local property management company. We manage about 300 properties, mostly in San Benito County. I do not have any of my own properties, nor do I represent clients in the RM zoning. I do not believe that the changes proposed do anything to solve the problems facing San Benito County. Actually, the opposite will occur since no one will build under the zoning conditions like this. San Benito County will not receive any of the benefits like multifamily or affordable housing in the RM zoning, which are things we badly need. So I have to question how such changes were even proposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jason Noble.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. On behalf of the San Benito County Association of Realtors and the thousands of families and professionals we represent throughout the region, I write to express strong opposition to Agenda Item 5.1, proposed ordinance amending Chapter 25 of the San Benito County Code to limit single-family housing development. San Benito County has long stood as a destination for families seeking the quality of life that single-family housing provides: open space, sense of community, and a place to raise their children with pride in home ownership. The proposed ordinance, by placing new limitations and conditions on the development of single-family homes, represents a step backward for housing opportunity, affordability, and local economic growth. While we recognize the importance of promoting a variety of housing types to meet a diverse set of needs, restricting the construction of single-family homes contradicts the fundamental reasons many residents choose to live in San Benito County. Our region does not face the same urban density constraints as neighboring cities. In fact, our greatest strength lies in offering what nearby urban centers cannot: space, community, and the dream of a single-family home. Furthermore, the ordinance as drafted may have the unintended consequence of exacerbating the very housing shortage and affordability crisis it seeks to address. By reducing land availability and increasing regulatory uncertainty for builders of single-family homes, the county risks discouraging much-needed private investment in new housing supply. This in turn can drive up prices, displace longtime residents, and stifle the balanced growth of our community needs. We urge the Planning Commission to reject this ordinance and instead collaborate with the local building and real estate community to develop thoughtful, inclusive policies that encourage a mix of housing types, including critically single-family homes, while preserving the unique character and livability that makes Samuel County so attractive to families. Thank you for your attention to this matter and for your ongoing service to our community.
Thank you.
And Carson Clower, please approach the podium.
Good evening. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak. I think that the majority of this title is pretty much ready to go. I have some qualms about removing single-family residential as a zoning designation, but I think there's arguments to be made for both sides of that. So I'm going to kind of stick to the changes to RM. If you put a cap of 25% single-family in the RM designation, it is very unlikely that you will see any projects proposed. If that is your aim, go ahead. If that is not your aim, then you can't put the cap. One size does not fit all. Every project that comes in is going to be looking at different financials based off of the number of units. You already have an inclusionary housing ordinance that's in place. Most of the builders who are looking at doing anything have to factor that in, and that's a huge number. I have a property for sale within the city, so it's a little different, but I had a big builder tell me that half of the property value was lost by having to account for that affordable housing ordinance. Now, whose problem is that? It's whoever ends up building the project or doesn't build the project. But you just approved a housing element that was planning for a bunch of affordable units. With this, and in most cases, the market rate housing pays for the affordable units. There's very little historical evidence that you're going to get enough units from public builders or from public builders or nonprofit companies to be able to suffice the need that's in this county. You have to find a way to have staff or the commission or the board work with people who are trying to bring projects to town to see what you can actually get. Because, like I said, one size does not fit all. In the city, before the inclusionary housing ordinance went into place, there was a couple projects that got approved where essentially staff or elected said, hey, we're okay with single family, but you got to bring us multifamily as well. And those have been built. Roberts Ranch, there's one on the west side that was built. If you don't allow people to be creative, you're not going to see the number of units that you need. The other thing, commercial does not belong in every neighborhood. 10% doesn't sound like a big deal, but if it's a small project, how are you supposed to meet that? Do you put like a Java Express on every corner that you have a small project? In some locations, you're fine with housing going in because the traffic might be 4 or 5 cars a day. But if you put in any commercial, those numbers are going to be huge. It might not work for that location. The other thing, just I kind of thought of, I appreciate the work that's being done on moving some things to admin permits instead of going to CUPs. That's a major, major issue is having to come before you guys for a lot of the different uses. So I appreciate that.
Gary Coates.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Gary Coates here on behalf of Ridgemark Development. As you all may know, we are in the process of amending the Ridgemark development process with amending the contract zone. Ridgemark is unique in the sense it's the only piece within the county that has a contract zone, which is a precursor to a PUD. It was a contract between the county and the owners setting forth the dimensions requirements for the development. So as we're going through, and I was looking at the ordinance, I wanted to make sure that there was an understanding in this that this project, we are in the environmental phase right now, the public review phase. Our EIR is out for public review, that we would not be subject to the conditions of the RM since we are in an RM zoning district, or general plan district, excuse me, with the contract zone. We have also a settlement agreement with the Homeowners Association, Ridgemark, that we must develop a certain type of development to comply with the Ridgemark Homes Association. Namely, all of our R1 lots must be a minimum of 10,000 square feet. So we have to do that. We also, in doing numbers, we cannot exceed 190 units there. The actual RM zone would allow much more, but we cannot do that with our agreement with the Homeowners Association. So we're operating, in our case, under a couple restrictive documents, namely the county's requirements, plus also the settlement agreement. So I just wanted to make sure that it was a question possibly that my understanding we would not be subject to this given the status of where we are in our process when we're going through it, the agreements that are in place, and also the contract zoning that is there. The other thing I did want to recommend or discuss a little bit, and I won't go over what previous speakers have said about the 25% in the RM zoning. There are two primary properties in that RM, one of them being the Lima property, which I also represent, and also the Ridgemark. Those projects, in order for them to go anywhere, providing for affordable housing, providing commercial, providing the mix that is desired within their zones, if you put a limitation of 25%, they just will not occur. One of your speakers said if you wish not to see development, that's exactly what will happen, because the R1s tend to be the financial engine that helps run some of this. Doesn't mean you create all R1 zoning. In fact, I don't think that's a good plan at all. I like the staff's comments about getting the mix, providing commercial, and you want to have the services that would meet the needs of that area. Commercial area being such that you may not want a regional, you may want a convenience. I'm 1 second, so I'll say thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, in chambers, Joe.
Good evening, commissioners. I just want to commend you guys for the potential removal of the single-family residential zoning. It's what, you know, it's a driver of sprawl, and it seems to be fairly unsustainable. And it just seems like we've kind of outgrown that, so to speak. It's just no longer part of our. It's just no longer something we should continue. It's for the same reasons we give up, riding tricycles when we're little kids. We've had our fun with the single family housing. We're getting bigger. It just seems like we should start to move on from that. I've noticed that there's going to be the addition of the category of battery storage facilities. I'm keeping an eye on that. I have no judgments yet, but I'm pretty sure I know the motivation behind that and what initiated that process. I have no current judgments so far, but I am keeping an eye on it. Yeah, that's about it. I again like to commend you guys for the removal of the single-family zoning. Seems like a good way to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and we're gonna move over to Zoom. Joe Tanasha, you've been allowed to unmute.
Good evening. After the last item you guys had on the agenda, I have to agree with some of the people that have talked on this one, but based on the last item, I don't see where a lot of this is going to help the ag industry or help the tourism industry, but create more problems. I think this is another one of those things that needs to be sent back and looked at a little bit more. I'm concerned about one thing. It's hard to understand everything. I'm not a developer, and I do something else for a living, which is farm, so I don't have all the time in the world to look at this stuff. But the ADUs, I can't believe that you're going to be 2 or more ADUs per lot, and they can go up to 2,500 square foot. That's a full residence. And I haven't seen the ADUs do much to relieve any of the housing congestion or lower the rents. ADUs are controlled by the state. The setbacks need to be at least what a regular residential house is on a lot, 5 acres, whatever. I've had some built next to my farming property that are 4 foot to 3 to 4 foot off the property line. The county needs to step up and inform the state due to health and safety issues that we need to keep these back off the property. We're not asking for, me as the next door neighbor and in agriculture is not asking for anything special. I mean, hey, move it off the property line a little bit and we can both be happy. That's one of those areas where compromise can happen. But 2 ADUs, 3 ADUs for property, what are you guys gonna do about the water table with all the septic tanks? Does any thought of that goes in? And I don't know if the bill passed up in Sacramento or not, but there's supposed to be an action by where people are gonna be able to legally split these 5 acres, 2.5 and whatnot, and other residential lots, and use it, by using the ADU that they have there as one of the new residences on the lot. I don't know if any discussion has been handled by that either, but that is just one section I saw, and there's others, and we wanna change our focus from economics to tourism. I don't see the benefit, and I don't see the benefit to the people living in the county for the roads and services. But we need development, and we need smart development, because we can't sit here and do nothing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then we're gonna move on through Zoom to Stacy McGrady. Stacy, I think you can unmute yourself.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Thank you, staff. I did read through the crowing rooster ordinance, which I think is a very nice way to talk about fighting roosters. Fighting roosters is something that I am very concerned about. Cockfighting, a blood sport where roosters are forced to fight, is illegal in all 50 states. It involves specifically roosters often given spurs, placed in a ring to fight, sometimes to the death, for the purpose of entertainment and gambling. We either support blood sports or we don't. And it's been historical here and in Monterey County where I work, that it's with a wink and a nod that we don't tolerate blood sport. So I was happy to see the ordinance that it limits it limits an owner to 6 roosters. Any more than that requires a permit. I would like to maybe suggest that if the rooster, chicken owners, fowl owners are active 4-H FFA members, that the fees for additional roosters be waived. And then I have a final question. I guess I'm just a little bit confused about why is kennel ordinance, spay neuter, cock rooster ordinance, why is this all going through the planning commission and not being proposed, presented, authored by staff from the animal shelter? I guess my confusion is Ariel going to be out conducting, investigations into rooster fighting, and if they have implements of cockfighting, and the animal shelter is doing architectural reviews? I'm just a little bit confused on why this is couched under or comes before the planning commission. It just seems like it would be more natural to be under the animal shelter. But I would love to know better if you have the opportunity to educate me on that. So thank you so much. I do appreciate the ordinance.
Thank you.
Okay, and then Eric, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi. Yes, I am a resident in Aromas and opposed removing single-family zoning from the general plan. Having come from, born and raised in San Jose and moved down here a number of years ago, I've single-handedly seen what happens when high-density and medium-density residential units get brought into established neighborhoods, and it obliterates anything resembling a community. As traffic goes up, roads become unsafe, neighborhoods become unsafe because there are too many cars and there's too many people, and it is my opinion that it's really not a good thing, even though the numbers look nice on paper. The actual experience of living in these communities that were once single-family residential areas that suddenly have medium and high-density housing put in, it doesn't raise, it doesn't become a good place to raise a family, and families leave. And the place, the place has just become not great areas to live in.
Thank you.
Chair, I have no more public comment in chambers or via Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Bringing it back to the commission then, for discussion. As I mentioned, I have a number of flags on my, packet to go through, but I imagine others of us do as well. I guess, shall we start to my far left, Commissioner Scaliotti? You probably have some comments.
The only comment I have is what Mr. Tanasha said with the setbacks on the ADUs. We need to address that, definitely. And how many per lot, we need to address that. That's all I have for right now. Let me think a little more. Thank you.
Through the chair, if it's.
Please.
I've met with Joe and took a look at that, issue. When I read back through the state legislation, we couldn't, from, reading through, we couldn't increase the setbacks because they had said it specifically. We could definitely send that through legal, and review it, one additional time. And then, again, and I tried to maybe hint on it a little bit, but I'll go a little bit further. With the State Water Quality Control Board, there is increased requirements on amount of acreage needed for septic systems, wells, setbacks to septic systems. And so that has really, limited how many could have two. So again, not every property would be able to hold that. But the setbacks, I did take a look at that from reading through this sections. It had specific requirements of new structures, being not more than 4 feet. And if it was built within an existing structure, then there was no setback requirement. However, I absolutely feel for that particular situation, as it was extremely tight and close on that property. And so we could definitely punt that to our county council and see if there is maybe another route that staff wasn't able to see on setbacks.
Sure, I can look at that, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I have a long list. I don't know if you want to go to Vinny first and.
Yeah, let's do that, unless you also have a long list.
I think both of you have a long list.
Okay, well, go for it, Vincent.
Really, there's some technical things. The battery storage item. Maybe you can clarify. Could have been more organized here.
You want more time?
Well, you're looking, and since it was a comment, and if you want, I can address, what we specifically put in land use tables is that battery storage is not permitted, except for backup storage, battery storage to an existing facility. And so that's what's in the code. And then there's reference that there's basically state requirements on battery storage, and so we just reference that.
Residential units are kind of exempt, or are exempt.
The battery storage as like a backup if there was a blackout is allowed, but no other battery storage facilities are allowed, and that was specifically added in there and put as not permitted.
So you can have a power wall at your house, but you can't have a Vistra, is what you're saying?
You, it removes, the ability to have like a Moss Landing battery storage facility. But battery storage is a backup to, commercial, industrial, residential, needs, is allowed.
Okay, so you're not gonna come in and rip out my power wall?
No, absolutely not. It's very much needed, especially as rolling blackouts, continue to become a thing.
And I'm just curious that we don't have maybe data centers here with backup storage, but I'm sure there's some facilities that have backup storage that are not residential. Those are the folks, I mean, there's people who have backup for their business, and then you have the huge backup, and I get that. So where, is there a wattage that defines the line there? A certain, a megawatt would be probably too much?
We did not include a specific megawatts, but we could add that language.
I think it would be in terms of megawatt hours, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well, just in regards to size, I think
Yeah.
for me, nobody's gonna have a 1,000,000 watt generator backup, but maybe if there was some language that determines size. Commercial places have a refrigerator, they wanna, if the power goes out, their freezers will be ruined, so I just want a little more clarification.
Yeah, absolutely. We can add some of that clarifying language in there.
Other issues?
Notice here it says testing for cannabis hemp or cannabis hemp, and there's nothing it's just empty next to a business park and light industrial. And
Yeah, I noticed that as well.
what does that mean then? If there's nothing marked next to it, there's a couple places.
Can you give us the page number in our
That's
packet?
127.
Yeah. That was the empty row.
And then on 126 as well, including commercial.
Yep. Yeah, this is a case where you've eliminated the label for the row, and yet in the row, it says it's permitted, 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 but the label for the row is gone.
Well, it's a continuation of the item above it. So where there's nothing, it should be C's slashed out, and then those should be PPP. It's just because it's a continuation of the table. It's just tricky to the eye to understand what happened.
Because it comes off of back from the page before.
Yeah, if you could, like a kid, you just fold the page and put it under that one, and then it shows up that.
Yeah. Oh, I guess I get it.
But
I guess I
good
get it.
catch, because I didn't catch that.
Okay, I guess I understand.
Yes, I see that table somehow was no longer, I see. Okay.
Yeah, when you delete the red line, then it should kick it up into the proper.
Yeah, so 126 appears to be a row without a label, and 127 appears to be a row without content, but when you put the two together, it's a row with a label and with content. Got it.
Oh, you guys are smarter than me.
That's why you keep me around.
I had, my notes are something, ADU, 2 per lot. Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
That's my baby.
I will pass it first to our commissioner and then.
Yeah, thank you. So we say we want affordable housing. Truly affordable housing is going to be small if we're trying to preserve housing for locals and not force people to move to Los Banos to afford. Also rentals. Rentals are ridiculous. If you look at the newest development out on Fairview, we thought that those apartments they're building would be somewhat affordable. They're not somewhat affordable, in particular if you work locally. So the thought is that an ADU, if we don't kill them with impact fees and the cost of materials doesn't kill them, if they can build them, then hopefully, if we get enough of them, the supply will keep rents down. So that's the thought of promoting the ADUs above everything else. So that's why I support multiple ADUs per lot. I mean, I think the state is actually looking at increasing that number through state law. I forget if it's 6 or 8 per lot. So, I mean, we may be superseded by the state.
I was just gonna say, what's the maximum square footage allowed for an ADU?
1,500 under our program. State's 1,200, but they give local jurisdictions the option to go to 1,500.
Ours is 1,500?
Yes, ours is 1,500, and we do have a pre-approved plan that goes to the 1,500. We currently have 6 plans, and actually I will just maybe put this note and thought into the commission's head. and thought process, that was used for the 2022 building code cycle, and we are going to be going into the 2025 building code cycle, and so we actually will need to do updates to those plans. There possibly will there will be a little bit of some, you know, cost to update those plans that meet the current building code, and so those plans will essentially expire by the end of the year, and so it might be a good idea to take a look at that.
And then hopefully we can get a report prior to that that shows if we've had any success with ADUs getting built. Because I know the construction, the materials are ridiculous, but it would be nice to know if we're having some sort of effect, since we've spent years working on that program. So it'd be nice at some point to get a report to see how successful we were.
Yeah, we can give a report of how many ADUs were done, and we could include how many of those used our site plans, and maybe actually in using them, there's been a few different things of recommendations we've received from people on maybe adjusting a few things in those designs that would maybe make them a little bit more popular, so we could include that in that presentation at a later date.
I had another question about the crowing fowl, but I just can't find it, so I'll get back to you on that if you don't mind.
Well, you'll have time to look.
I did, in taking some notes and, you know, listening to, you know, the public, it might make sense to move, you know, some of those sections to the animal ordinance. The reason why some of it stayed there is it related back to development standards, which is kind of a zoning thing, but they do correlate. And so we could maybe take an additional look at that. Similarly, with the cat and dog pieces, there was development standards in there, and so that's why we put it in 2507. But that might not be so clear, so we could take a look if there's a better organizational.
Just for my knowledge, so I can get a chance to look it up, how many roosters are allowed?
6. And crowing fowl, so rooster falls under crowing fowl, but they're like peacocks, and there's more than just
peacocks.
It's not an issue.
There's a whole,
It's not an issue until the owners cause an issue, basically. They're not gonna, code enforcement isn't driving around checking your chicken coop unless you're doing something funny.
Right, like we have a neighbor that has chickens and a rooster, and the rooster sits up on the fence and crows all day. I don't mind, but I've heard a lot of complaints. What would their options be for that in a residential? 0, right?
Well, you know, that's, again, a complicated issue. As we heard tonight, you know, we're an ag community, and allowing in some of those residential districts was important. However, you know, other areas, like maybe our new San Juan Oaks or Santana Ranch, maybe it's not as friendly because you're a lot more close quarters, and there isn't much setbacks. So, you know, that's a policy decision. I don't know, because it's, you know, a little bit related to the discussion before, we should kind of pull that section and similar to the recommendation, take it back to the ag element stakeholder group. It's complicated.
I would prefer not to overload them. They already have a heavy lift, and we don't want this thing to go on for 2 or 3 years, so I'd rather hold off on that personally. I think it's more, you can't legislate good neighbors or good people. And if somebody's in a neighborhood and they have a rooster, maybe they ought to consider not. I know in the city you can only have so many hens. I think it's 4 hens or something like that. But I don't think at the county level we want to try to parse that, because We have a lot of rural ag.
Yep.
And to make rules that are that fine would cause problems that we wouldn't be able to
I would agree.
anticipate, I think. So just
Yeah,
bake
you
them
have
bake
to-
'em a loaf of bread, or say, give me some eggs for my suffering. That thing crowing at 3 in the morning.
From the rooster.
Well, no, from the hen.
I actually like it. I think it's part of where we live. But some folks, it's just like an annoying dog that barks all day. I
We have
mean,
those in the country too.
What do you do with that? So, yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Vinny's good?
That covers.
Okay. Okay.
Go for it.
Let's go. So page 9, it says including 10% commercial, but if you go, and I'll refer back to that, because if you go to the ordinance, it says 5.
Yeah,
So I
there's a
figured we ought to, although I would agree with the speakers that said we may want to revisit the scheme that we're coming up with. Maybe two planning commissioners could join the supervisors and maybe do a little more digging into changing the scheme before we put thought into it.
Yeah, and so I can maybe just talk a little bit more. The thought had been, provide, the part with commercial had been, how could we maybe get some more commercial in here? And so maybe looking at some sort of requirement in our RM that, hit, and there was this side, well, it's, commercial isn't gonna hit, be the right place in every section, and, so it's kind of it was, some back and forth discussion, and I think that's why you see the 5 and the 10%, because, I think we had started with 10%, and then we reduced it to 5%. We were trying to come up with what's a happy number. We talked about square footages, and then, but how do you determine like a correct square footage of amount of commercial, and so, so maybe we didn't land 100%, but, there was this idea of how could we maybe get a little bit more commercial in the correct locations within the county.
I'm all for commercial, but I agree with Carson. You have to figure out the size of the project to determine whether or not it's going to be an undue burden or if it works.
And
So
you can also be within half a mile of a road and have no reasonable way of getting there. So, you could be across a railroad track or something, and you could be required to build commercial facilities with no access. So, yeah, there has to be a little bit more finesse to it.
And then going to the chart that we approved the last meeting regarding the minimum acreage, if we can change that language so it isn't murky as can be. I know we talked about it offline, but I'd like to mention it here so that it's on the record that we're gonna do something about it so that people understand that that the minimum acreage will be those numbers and not those are the minimum acreage to subdivide, because that's confusing as can be.
Yes, so staff actually worked on that today and included that in the presentation to the board. Okay. And so some of the things we added was on that, actually, if CMAP could go to the PowerPoint presentation, I'll go to that slide, I think. Okay, so some of the things that we added in the presentation that will be going to the board was where it says minimum lot size for subdivision only. I believe we included some thoughts of minimum lot size required for new subdivision only. And then we said 160 acres like per lot, 40 acres per lot, 5 acres. So we added that per lot to help. And then at the bottom, oh, thank you. I have amazing staff. I was going by memory, I think. Yeah, so far so good. Oh, per new lot. And then at the bottom, we added examples and to help even further clarify. So I'll just read it. Examples. In AR, to apply for a new subdivision application to go from 1 lot, parentheses parcel, to 2 lots, parentheses parcels, would require a minimum of 320 acres, each new lot parcel being 160 acres. In AP, to apply for a subdivision application go from 1 lot to 2 lots would require a minimum of 80 acres, each new lot being 40 acres for our, and it continues. And so hopefully it will be very clear. So that was a few things, and it'll be in the presentation, and it wasn't necessarily what was recommended by the Planning Commission, but just to help with that.
Okay, and just further comment, my hope is that through the ag element process, we will massage those numbers and perhaps get detailed maps of where those apply, and there will be different minimum acreages throughout the county, because one size does not fit all. The next is a text error on page 45, 25.01.008 appeals. It just says error, bookmark not defined. Page 45.
Oh, yes, you're right. It's not showing the page number. We will correct that.
Just book, yeah. Next item, we corrected the 20 acres, never mind. I had a question on page 107. I messed up all my order. Maximum density, 8 to 20. Was that changed in the housing element? Didn't we increase the minimum density?
So that will be coming there. The sites that were selected will have a residential high, so it'll be its own zoning district. So we'll be updating the general plan and the zoning, but this is what's existing.
Okay. Then on page 108 was where we had the 5% of the commercial. So if the ad hoc or somebody can, after you're doing more research and refining things, hopefully that'll be an issue to consider.
Would the recommendation be then to just remove that entire text script under additional development standard requirements?
I don't have a recommendation per se. I think that if there's an ad hoc or somebody formed to review the entire concept that was discussed during public comment, getting rid of R1 altogether and how RM can't serve everything, and then the neighborhood commercial, I think that needs to be reviewed before action is taken so we can be a little more thoughtful. The comment earlier trying to smash a gnat with a sledgehammer, I think we don't want to do that too many times.
Robert, can you maybe explain what FAR is at the bottom of page 108? What is that an acronym for?
Floor area ratio?
Yes.
I couldn't tell you what it is, but that's what it is.
Oh.
Ariel could answer that though.
I actually am gonna default to my director, because his explanation of it is way better than my explanation, and I don't want to mess it up.
It just refers to lot coverage. So it's essentially, if it's a 1 floor area ratio, it means that the whole lot can be covered. So 0.8 means, less coverage. So it's just a percentage of the lot that can be covered. That's what it intends. So really 0.8 would allow for additional aspects within the lot to like parking, landscaping, and so forth. Yeah. You're welcome.
Then page 60 at the bottom, letter G, it also refers to 5%. So when that's brought back, just note that that's also in there. Page 215 would be 62 of 96. Cannabis screening 2A. Materials, it says tarpaulins, razor wire, and scarp metal. I'm assuming that's scrap. And then on subsection D, it says where possible, fencing shall be designed to allow for the movement of wildlife. That's interesting. I'm just curious what that would be other than an invisible fence, because a fence that'll block the view cannot allow wildlife. So I'm just curious if that should just be deleted, because it's not possible and it might just create confusion.
We could delete it. We had researched other jurisdictions, and multiple jurisdiction, requirements on that, and some others had that, but we could remove it.
Is it workable? Because I can't think of a fence that wildlife can pass through that you can't see through.
Well, some of the thought is like similar a little bit to like some of the ag fencing, where it's like cattle can't go through, but you could sell squirrels and so that was our understanding.
Is it an abomination?
Well, maybe we shouldn't allow the squirrels through.
No. Okay, so if you could just ponder that one. Page 258, back to my beating the drum about ADUs. I've requested many times that the board consider reducing the impact fees for ADUs to encourage them, and I don't think I've made it anywhere. However, I had a thought while not sleeping one night. If we can increase in letter A, no county imposed impact fee shall be charged for an accessory dwelling unit that is less than, change 750 to 1,201, and I'll get my way without having to fight the system, if the planning commission agrees to that and the board agrees with it. But I think that we should be encouraging ADUs as something that's truly affordable. I mean, I've seen prices on various formats that they are lower than single-family housing or a bedroom in a house or something like that. So I think if we're putting our money where our mouths are, that we really want ADUs, that we do something and not study it or wait another 5 years. I think it's something that we should act on.
I would be okay with that.
I'm good with that, but you have to do it also on paragraph B.
Correct.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep, I'm good
And
with that.
then change the paragraph B to 1,201. Then the formula comes in. Because a 1,200 square foot unit isn't massive. 1,500 is a little larger. It's great. I love the design that we have. I wish somebody would build one. I'd love to tour it. But that's my suggestion for those two items, and I think I have a consensus for that, which surprises me, so I'm happy. Page 275, J1, general, recreational vehicle parks, parentheses, RV parks are required to obtain a permit from the California Department of Housing and Community Development. I thought that was mobile home parks. RV like Thousand Trails needs to get a permit from the state. I just wanted to make sure we're not.
275.
275 J1. It seems odd, but given we're in the state of California, I guess it's not out of the question. But I didn't want to require something that isn't necessary or even doable.
I need to double check it one more time. I believe that is the requirement, but now I want to double check it one more time.
And then down to J4, well, actually it would be JB, no, 4B. General health and safety, all recreational vehicle spaces shall be provided with individual connections to adequate wastewater disposal. I don't know if the existing parks have sewer hookups at each. I know there's a point where you can pull your vehicle around and there's a spot to dump your sewage, but I don't know if requiring somebody to pipe every single space makes sense economically. I would like to review that and see if it's required, because it seems burdensome. We're trying to encourage tourism, and then we're going to make it extremely impossible to afford to build one given these rules.
Through the chair, I just want to answer your question about RV parks. RV parks are considered special occupancy parks, and they do require a permit from HCD.
Huh. Wow, you learn something horrifying every day. So if we can look at, so if we can look at the sewage hookup, I would rather not try to force them to run pipe for sewer if it doesn't make sense, because they are moving from time to time. So.
And just my thought on that, being an RV owner and loving to do the RV thing, there's a lot of dry camping sites that don't have plumbing, and those are just as good.
Okay, we'll look into that, make sure we're not requiring something that isn't.
this one's just a typo, page 286E4A. Junction of the walls and floor shall be provided with a waterproof coating of covering. There's an extra N at the end of covering.
Thank you.
I'm hopefully taking things off of Rich's list because he's pretty good.
Not so far.
Oh, you've got more. Okay, page 332, number 6. This is regarding the range. It says no alcohol or illegal drugs. Cannabis is legal. So if you can smoke a joint while you're shooting, then you might as well have a cocktail. I think we need to figure out some language that's better.
Sir, you cannot legally smoke cannabis open in the public space, so that is illegal pursuant to state law.
Well, can we just clarify then and add in parentheses, including cannabis? Because
Absolutely.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I don't smoke. I've never smoked it. So, okay. I would just like to clarify.
Okay, we can add that clarification.
Okay.
Well, can I say something? Any responsible range person would not allow alcohol and or drugs of any sort. I would hope not, because I'm leaving if they are.
Well, I just want to clarify it since it's there. The other thing I noticed on page 333, Roman numeral 2, number 3, video surveillance system shall operate continuously without interruption whenever the commercial sport shooting range is open to the public. But up above it said something about they can sell ammunition and guns. Wouldn't you want 24-hour surveillance?
We can modify that to be 24-hour.
I would think I'm saying if you have ammunition and guns on site, that you probably should have surveillance, given the world we live in today. Almost there. Oh, page 336 for the indoor ranges is the same thing, illegal drugs, if we can just put, including cannabis in there. Page 337, Roman numeral 2, number 3, same thing about the continuously running camera. And that takes care of all my issues. Thank you.
Okay, here we go.
Before you get started, can I just interject
Yes,
one thing
please.
here on the shooting range? Is that are you saying that that's for indoor only, or is that to be complied for outdoor and indoor ranges? The video?
Video's both.
Both,
If you have ammunition and or guns for sale, there needs to be 24 hours.
I agree.
I think they'd want it, but
Oh, yeah, I think
the
so.
code doesn't say it, so I'd rather just change the code.
I actually think it's a state law
Okay,
to have 24-hour surveillance at a firearms dealership.
all right.
Okay.
Give me the page numbers.
Okay. Okay, so the first item that I have was actually, when I spotted this, I was alarmed initially, and it's interesting because somebody on Nextdoor in Aromas spotted this as well and was equally alarmed, and I believe he was actually on Zoom earlier tonight, and I tried to reassure him earlier on Nextdoor that no, it's not something to be alarmed about, and hopefully you can reassure me that my interpretation is correct. Anyway, long story short, on page 50, the notification, the notices of applications being filed have been stricken and in their entirety. And his concern was, so now we don't get notified at all. And I tried to reassure him, no, that's not the case. It's been moved. And it's been moved to page 30. And that appears to be the case. However, upon further reading, something did get dropped, and I suspect it got dropped inadvertently, and I suspect it can be reinstated pretty easily. What seems to have been dropped was under item E, under 1C, a specific deadline of not less than 7 calendar days from the date of the mailing to respond in writing to provide comments. And under item 2D, the notice shall include a deadline of not less than 7 calendar days. Those two items are not in page 30. If you see what was copied to page 30, those deadlines were not incorporated into what's on page 30.
Got it.
So that probably just needs to be copied over there.
Absolutely. So, I mean, it's really a dealer's choice. We thought it was super repetitive, and that was the only reason, you know, we just had it the one time and
Sure.
and did the other, but we don't have to delete it. We could keep it in every single section and be repetitive either way.
Well, the danger with it being repetitive is that the two sections can grow out of sync with each other. So it's better to have it in one place, in my opinion. It's just that if it is in one place, it needs to be complete where it's located, so.
Absolutely. We'll add
Yeah.
that in. Good catch.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. And then on page 31, and I promise you, I don't have issues with every single page. But on page 31, I think there's an error where you have the opposite of what you meant to say here, unless I'm reading this wrong. At the bottom of the page under modifications, it's, I'm just reading this the way I'm reading it here. It says that changes to an approved development plan review, which are in the director's discretion, not minor, can be approved by the director. Okay, so I'm omitting some words here, but it's saying the director can approve it. If he thinks it's not minor, he can approve it. I think it's supposed to say if he thinks it's not major, he can approve it. It shouldn't say if he thinks it's not minor, he can approve it.
Are in the 7 denial? Sorry, or are you in the appeals A?
At the very bottom of page 51.
Oh, 51. Oh, that would help me. I was on
Sorry.
31.
I'm sorry.
My apologies. That was me. I didn't hear correctly.
I probably did say 31. I'm sorry. Yeah, my eyes are not what they should be.
Okay. All right, I'm reading it.
Yeah, so it says if he thinks it's not minor, he can approve it. But it should say if he thinks it's not major, he can approve it.
Oh, yeah, I see. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that reads better.
Yep.
Okay.
And then, okay, this one I've already addressed, so we don't need to talk about that. Yeah, page 66, just a question. Under item 2, this is the crowing fowl, hours of confinement. Crowing fowl must be kept inside an enclosure between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. Do we define an enclosure? Does an enclosure have to have a roof? Is it just a pen? I know it says inside an enclosure. That kind of implies that it has a roof, but it doesn't actually say so.
Let me check the glossary.
Okay.
Really quick, just.
I suppose I could have done that.
No, let's do it together.
Assuming that's a keeper.
Yeah, if it's just a pen, it doesn't, yeah, but if, yep.
A roof and.
Before 6 a.m.
Right,
A roof and 4 walls.
exactly.
Okay, we did actually add a definition in our glossary. I'm gonna read it and then
Okay.
you let me know if maybe we need to modify it.
Okay.
We have a fence or structure designed to prevent unauthorized entry and securely confine an animal with adequate exercise area, ventilation, and sanitation in compliance with state and local animal welfare
Yeah,
standards.
that's a problem, because a structure is probably fine, but the way it's written, it's a fence or structure, so if somebody builds a fence, they're like, okay, he's in an enclosure, he's inside a fence.
Okay.
So, yeah, we need to, instead of saying inside an enclosure, it needs to say inside an enclosure with a roof, or inside a structure maybe is a better way, inside a structure with a roof, something like that.
So, then, enclosure, I think the best way to maybe modify that, through the chair is a structure with a roof. I think
Yep.
that's probably
That
the most
works.
clear.
Okay, thank you.
Chair?
Yes.
Wouldn't an enclosed structure be better?
Yes, yes.
It's
enclosed
the word
structure.
enclosed.
Enclosed structure, I like
Enclosed
that.
Okay.
structure.
Thank you,
Thank you.
thank you. Page 67, item 6, sub-item 3, food storage and waste disposal. Food should be stored in vermin-proof containers. Food must be stored in vermin-proof containers.
Can we change it?
Shall be stored.
All right.
Page 68, I know I said I didn't have everything on every single page, but in this particular section, I kind of do. Page 68, item G. You made a pass-through trying to eliminate planning from planning director, but in item G, there are 2 occurrences of planning director. So eliminate the word planning in item G twice.
I just can't get Abraham's title right. No matter how many years we work together, I just can't get it right.
On page 69, we have a funny item. On page 69, well, it's not exactly funny. I mean, it's humorous. It's not funny. There's nothing funny about cockfighting. But because of the way this is worded, it could be read that Future Farmers of America and 4-H are allowed to host cockfighting. The reason I say this is that if you read the exceptions, item J, the following are exempt from the provisions of this article. Future Farmers of America and 4-H projects are exempt from the items above, and the items above are, among other things, cockfighting regulations. So, yeah, we need to clarify that there are certain things that they're not exempt from.
Okay, except for Article I.
Exactly.
Um,
And there might be other things
but
that we don't want to exempt them from.
It's illegal. I just want
I
to
know.
put that on the right. It's illegal.
Under state
Yeah,
law.
but we can clarify.
But the county said we could host cockfights for a fundraiser.
Yeah.
Sure.
But there may be other things that we don't want to exempt them from too. I don't know. I mean, inspections, well, we might need to look at this a little more closely to see what are we exempting them from.
Maybe just clearly stating more that it has to do with the number.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
And so maybe in the exceptions, the following are exempt from, let me go back to, the number is on, hang on.
Yeah, exempt them from the number.
Yes, sorry, I want to say the
Because we
correct.
don't want to exempt them from providing shade and weather protection and.
So it'd be A.
We have some time to figure it out.
Okay.
We're bringing it back by August, since we don't have a meeting in July, I would assume.
We do not.
To make sure, so then we'll probably bring it back in August, so we can make sure everything's been adjusted as we requested.
Maybe so. Okay, well, that's it for that item. Moving forward. See what else we have here. The next item is, we already talked about the venues. What is this flag? Sorry.
Really quick, is the recommendation to change it to conditional?
No,
Sorry?
no. I think we should encourage small venues so that we improve our tourism. I think Mr. Way was just concerned about what venue meant, if it meant a theme park or.
Right, exactly.
Or if it was a wedding
Yeah.
facility or an event facility.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I could make a note about in the standards section, you know, if it exceeds like a certain threshold, then it would require conditional. So we could look at that to bring.
Right, I have no problem with issuing an administrative permit for, you know, a wedding venue, something like that. But yeah, Oracle Park or something like that, I don't want just.
Yeah, you could add examples too. That's
Yeah.
one thing, right?
And yeah, so we can look at adding some of that.
Okay, that's a flag.
Sorry,
we've
which
already
page again
addressed.
was that on?
The venue?
The venue appears pretty much throughout under
Okay.
various and various,
Okay, so just
various
all of them,
zones.
okay.
Yeah. We already talked about this, we talked about this.
We're almost there.
Yep, a lot of these we've already discussed under other, okay, what is this one? Sorry. Oh yeah, page 155, I think we just have a word usage issue. Page 155, paragraph E. It talks about track homes, and I think you're talking about tract homes, T-R-A-C-T.
You don't want to run around the homes?
Oddly enough, the spell checker didn't catch that. Yeah, I know, exactly.
Feisty.
Let's see, what else do we have here? Not much else, actually.
Okay.
And most of the other things we may have already dealt with. Okay, we talked about the R1. Oh, yeah, and I think Commissioner Scagliotti may be able to help me with this one. On page 333, at the very bottom on item 6, video surveillance system must be maintained in proper working order at all times. If the system becomes inoperable, it must be repaired or replaced within 14 calendar days. That gives them 2 weeks to operate without a working video system. That, to me, seems high. I mean, maybe that's impractical to repair the video system within less time than that, but is that reasonable?
Let's see, the video, for instance, then if you turn the page to 334, it says operational images are being recorded and retained as they have to be retained, so. I think when it switched over.
We can look at that, double check.
Carrie and I talked about it now, and I don't remember why we came up with that number, but we did.
Maybe it's impractical to repair it in less than 14 days. I don't know.
I believe this was researched and found to be used in other jurisdictions.
Okay.
But I could double check the state and then we will, maybe I'll provide a change there.
Okay, well, you know, if other jurisdictions are doing similar, then I'm probably.
Yeah, there's a reason we came up with that number, and I don't remember now. It's
It
been
came
3 or 4
from,
months.
I'm like 99% positive it was in, when reviewing other jurisdictions, they had 14 days.
Okay, all right, thank you. And, okay, I think the only other thing I had was in the animal ordinance, which we already agreed to continue, so there's no point in belaboring that. All right, I think that's the extent of my comments. So.
Could, before final,
go ahead.
I actually had a staff clarifying question. One of the things had been on that RM housing to take it, to an ad hoc. So ad hocs, are established by the board, and County Council, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm remembering correctly. And so that particular housing advisory ad hoc was established by the board and who was to be on it. So without going back through the board, I don't think we could modify that. However, what we could do separately is, you assign maybe 2 people to meet with staff on that and then come up with some items, and then I can take it and present it to the ad hoc, or I just wanted to see how you want.
I would just encourage, I certainly don't want anything to do with it. I have enough things to do, but I would encourage the planning commission to consider forming an ad hoc of the three of you sitting to my right, to consider being on it and working on it as per the public comments, that we take a look at what the effect would be of removing R1 and the various other comments, if there's an interest.
Or just, providing some sort of additional direction. But I can't modify that particular ad hoc because it was done by the board.
Right, I think, I think before I would want to do that necessarily, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea, but I think I would want to have a conversation with at least one of the board members to see if there's an appetite for adding one or more of us to the existing ad hoc.
Yeah, I just think that at this point, we would continue the entire thing until the August meeting, and that would give time for staff to make the corrections and do the research, and then that would also give time to you during the July recess, if you chose to pursue further research, that you could appoint. Because it's under the power of the chair to appoint at any time. We don't need to vote on it. So if between now and the August meeting you wanted to do some research, you could appoint whoever you wanted to it and further discover what the effects would be of these suggested changes.
True.
And I didn't think about all the things that were brought up, and I think that we should ponder more deeply before we take action, if there's consensus on the planning commission to do so.
I concur with that.
All right.
There's enough on here that to consider, tabling this.
All right. All right, sounds like there's a motion to be made.
Well, it's a really, I'll make a motion to continue this item to the regular meeting of August, because we're on break in July. And that all of these items that were mentioned, I'm not gonna list them all off again, because we'll be here till 10. But all the items that were mentioned, to bring them back with those changes, and that we direct ourselves to form an ad hoc to review the single-family housing and the RM issues, and the neighborhood commercial with the 5 or 10%, to review those and flesh them out a little before we bring them back. That's my motion.
Is there a second?
Was that part, if necessary, the ad hoc piece?
Yes, if necessary.
If necessary.
I think we should review it, at least somebody should review it, and since we're on break and I don't want anything to do with it, I'm suggesting other people pick up the mantle.
Is there a second
I'll
for that?
second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? No? Okay, motion carries 4-0. Thank you very much. All right. And, okay, so having concluded the regular business, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion carries 4-0. We are adjourned at 9:15. Thank you very much.
And thank you all for hanging out with us.
I didn't want to continue the crowing.
I forgot. Clarify for the record. It was, my notes. I'm so sorry.